Never go into the blackthorn forest after dark. That's what every mother in Greystone Village told their daughters. That's what Sarah's grandmother had whispered on her deathbed, gripping Sarah's hand with surprising strength. That's what the elders carved into the warning stones at the forest's edge. But Sarah would learn that some rules exist not to protect you from monsters, but to protect monsters from what they might become when they finally find you. Because in the Blackthorn Forest lived the cursed Alpha, a beast who could never be human, never be loved, never be saved. And Sarah was about to become the one thing more dangerous than his curse, his mate, the one rule she was destined to break, the one rule that would either destroy them both or set them free. Chapter 1. The Unwanted Daughter. Sarah Ashwood had learned early that being invisible was safer than being seen. She learned it at 5 years old, when her mother remarried the wealthy merchant Aldrich Thorne and brought home a stepdaughter who glittered like morning frost. Elara Thorne, all golden curls and sapphire eyes, a girl who commanded attention simply by existing. She learned it at 7, when her mother stopped calling her my darling and started calling her Sarah in that flat, disappointed tone reserved for chores left undone. She learned it at 10, when Elara received a white pony for her birthday, and Sarah received a lecture about gratitude for the roof over her head. Now, at 22, Sarah had perfected the art of disappearing. She kept to the edges of rooms, wore browns and grays that blended with shadows, spoke only when directly addressed. In the Thorne household, this was survival. Sarah, her stepfather's voice boomed through the manor. Where is that worthless girl? She emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her worn dress. She'd been preparing bread since dawn. The servants had the day off for the harvest festival, and someone had to ensure the family ate. Yes, father. He wasn't her father, would never be her father, but calling him sir had earned her a backhand once, and she'd learned that lesson too. Aldrich Thorne stood in the great hall, his considerable bulk wrapped in fine velvet. Beside him, Elara preened in a new gown of crimson silk that probably cost more than Sarah would see in a lifetime. Her mother Elena hovered nearby, adjusting Elara's perfectly arranged curls with the devotion she'd once shown Sarah. Once, a lifetime ago, before Sarah's father died and desperation drove her mother into Aldrich's arms. The festival preparations, Aldrich announced. Elara will need her blue gown pressed, her jewelry cleaned, and her hair ribbons prepared. The Duke's son will be attending, and my daughter must look her finest. My daughter. Never. My daughters. Of course, Sarah murmured, though she'd planned to attend the festival herself. It was the one night a year when the whole village gathered, when even servants and merchants' daughters could dance under lantern light and forget their stations. Don't pout, dear, her mother said softly, not meeting Sarah's eyes. Envy is unbecoming, especially in one so plain. The word landed like a slap. Plain. As if Sarah's dark hair and gray eyes were a personal failing. As if the beauty she'd inherited from her real father, the strong jaw, the determined brow, the lean strength of her frame counted for nothing because it wasn't delicate and golden like Elara's. I'm not envious, Sarah said quietly. I was simply hoping to. Hoping? Elara laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Oh, Sarah. You can't actually believe someone like you belongs at a festival? You'd frighten the children looking like that. All those dreadful ashes in your hair from the kitchen fires, and that hideous dress. It was the only dress Sarah owned that wasn't actively falling apart. She'd mended it herself by candlelight, her fingers cramping from the delicate work. Elara's right, Aldrich said dismissively. You'd be out of place. Better you stay here and ensure the house is properly managed. Someone must be responsible. Elara's right. Sarah's throat tightened, but she refused to let tears fall. She'd learned that lesson too, tears only encouraged them. As you wish. She turned to leave, but her mother's voice stopped her. Sarah. For a moment, just a moment, Sarah heard something in that voice, regret, perhaps, or the ghost of love. After the festival, perhaps we could talk. About finding you a position in town. A baker's apprentice, maybe, or a seamstress. You're skilled with your hands. Translation. It's time we got rid of you permanently. How generous, Sarah managed, and fled before her voice could break. She spent the afternoon in Elara's chambers, performing miracles with needle and thread, making her stepsister beautiful for a festival Sarah would never attend. Through the window, she could hear the village coming alive, musicians tuning instruments, children shrieking with laughter, the smell of roasted meat and honey cakes drifting on the autumn wind. Alara watched her work in the mirror, a small smile playing at her lips. "You know," she said conversationally, "I've always wondered what it's like to be you." Sarah kept her eyes on the hem she was stitching. "Don't engage. Don't react. To be so thoroughly unwanted," Alara continued. "Your own mother can barely stand to look at you. My father certainly wishes you didn't exist, he says so all the time when you're not around. Even the servants pity you. And that's truly pathetic." The needle slipped, pricking Sarah's finger. A drop of blood welled up, bright and red against her pale skin. "Careful," Alara cooed. "We wouldn't want you to stain my gown with your common blood, though I suppose it would match the color." She laughed at her own joke. Sarah sucked the blood from her finger and returned to stitching. She'd perfected the art of emptying herself, of becoming hollow so the words would pass through without catching. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, the hollowness felt more like a void, dark and hungry and desperate to be filled with anything other than this endless, crushing invisibility. "You could run away," Alara suggested, examining her nails. "That's what girls like you do in stories, isn't it? Run away and find adventure? Of course, in reality, you'd probably just starve in a ditch somewhere, but at least you'd die free. Free." The word echoed in Sarah's mind long after Alara left for the festival in a swirl of perfume and silk. Free. Night fell, and the manor emptied. Even the servants who'd returned from their day off had slipped out to catch the end of the festival. Sarah stood in the great hall, surrounded by wealth that would never be hers, in a home where she would never belong. Through the windows, she could see lantern light in the village square, could hear music and laughter, could imagine, for just a moment, what it might feel like to dance under those lights, to be seen, to matter. Her eyes drifted to the north windows. Beyond the village, past the farmlands and meadows, rose the dark wall of blackthorn forest. Even from here, it looked hungry. Waiting. Never go into the blackthorn forest after dark. Every child in Greystone knew the stories. The cursed alpha who ruled those woods, a beast trapped between man and wolf, neither fully one nor the other. They said he'd been a prince once, cursed for his cruelty. They said he hunted anyone who entered his territory. They said his howls on full moon nights could drive men mad. They said a lot of things. But what they didn't say, what the old women whispered only when they thought no one was listening, was that the curse could be broken. That somewhere in those dark woods lived not just a monster, but a man waiting to be saved. Of course, they also said that any woman foolish enough to try would be torn apart. Sarah looked down at her hands, work roughened, scarred from years of labor no one appreciated. Hands that had served a family that despised her. Hands that had built a life of invisible servitude. What was the point of survival if you were already dead inside? The thought came suddenly, crystallizing everything. She could stay here and slowly disappear completely, becoming less and less until even she forgot she existed. Or she could walk into those woods, and at least die trying to live. Neither option was good. But one was honest. Sarah grabbed her threadbare cloak, the one possession her mother hadn't taken, and given to Alara. She took a loaf of the bread she'd baked that morning, a knife from the kitchen, a small skin of water, and then, while the village celebrated and her family danced, Sarah Ashwood walked out the front door of Thorn Manor and turned north, toward the one place she'd been warned never to go, toward the Blackthorn Forest, toward the cursed alpha who lived in its heart. The moon rose full and silver overhead, illuminating her path. In the distance, she heard it, a howl that raised every hair on her body. Not quite wolf, not quite human, something caught between, crying out its anguish to an indifferent sky. Sarah didn't stop walking. For the first time in 17 years, she was choosing something for herself, even if that choice was a beautiful, terrible mistake. If stories like Sarah's remind you that worth can't be destroyed by cruelty, subscribe to join others who believe hidden strength deserves recognition. Chapter 2. The Boundary Between Worlds. The forest's edge was marked by ancient stones, each one carved with warnings in a language Sarah barely understood. The symbols seemed to writhe in the moonlight, or perhaps that was just her fear playing tricks. She paused at the boundary, one hand resting on the nearest stone. It was cold beneath her palm, colder than autumn night should make it. The temperature seemed to leach into her bones, and for a moment, doubt crept in. Turn back. This is madness. But turn back to what? A life of servitude? Her mother's disappointed sighs? Alara's casual cruelty? The slow suffocation of being unwanted in the only home she'd ever known? Sarah stepped across the boundary. The change was immediate. The air grew thick, heavy with something she couldn't name. The sounds of the village festival vanished as if cut by a blade, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by the whisper of wind through leaves that shouldn't be moving. The trees here were different, twisted, dark, their branches reaching toward each other like grasping fingers. No moonlight penetrated the canopy. Sarah pulled her cloak tighter and moved forward, each step taking her deeper into shadow. She'd gone perhaps 100 yards when she heard it, breathing that wasn't her own. Sarah froze. Her hand found the kitchen knife at her belt, laughably inadequate against whatever lurked in these woods, but it was all she had. Foolish girl. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, rough as gravel, edged with something that might have been amusement. Do you have any idea where you are? The blackthorn forest, Sarah said, proud that her voice didn't shake. I know the stories. Stories. A low, rumbling sound that could have been laughter. Stories are pretty lies told to children. This is truth, girl. This is consequence. Movement in the shadows, something large, circling her just beyond sight. Sarah turned slowly, trying to track it, but it moved too quickly. All she caught were glimpses, fur darker than midnight, eyes that gleamed gold in the blackness, something too big to be a wolf but too low to be a man. Why are you here? The voice was closer now, and Sarah realized with a start that it was coming from the creature. Not a man hiding in the woods, the beast itself was speaking. How did you explain emptiness to a monster? I had nowhere else to go. Liar. The word was a growl. Greystone Village is full of places. You chose this. You chose me. Why? Sarah's hand tightened on her knife. Maybe I wanted to see if the stories were true. If the cursed alpha really exists, or if he's just a tale parents tell to keep children obedient. Silence. Then that dark laughter again. Oh, I exist, girl. And now that you're here, in my territory, you belong to me. That's how this works. That's how it's always worked. I belong to no one, Sarah said, surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. Not anymore. Brave words. The creature stepped into a shaft of moonlight that somehow penetrated the canopy, and Sarah's breath caught. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, with the powerful build of a warrior wrapped in midnight fur. But it was his form that made her stare. Not quite wolf, not quite man, but something trapped between. He stood on 2 legs, but they were digitigrade, bent like a wolf's. His hands bore clawed fingers that could have been human once. His face was the most disturbing, a wolf's muzzle and ears, but set on a skull that was too human, with those burning gold eyes that held far too much intelligence. A monster. And yet, you're in pain, Sarah said softly. The alpha went very still. What? Your right foreleg, you're favoring it. And the way you hold yourself. Something's wrong with your ribs. She'd seen enough injuries on the farm animals to recognize the signs. How long have you been hurt? For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, 3 weeks. A hunter's trap in the deep forest. I've been unable to shift fully to either form to heal properly. I could help, Sarah offered, and immediately felt foolish. What was she doing? Offering medical aid to a cursed monster. But the alpha tilted his head, studying her with those unsettling eyes. You're not afraid. I am, Sarah admitted. Terrified. Actually. But, she struggled for words. Fear's not new. I've been afraid every day for years. At least here, the monster is honest about what it is. Something shifted in those golden eyes, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. What's your name, girl? Sarah Ashwood. Sarah. He tested the name, his voice making it sound almost musical. "I am Kale, once Prince of the Northern Territories. Now." He gestured to himself with bitter mockery. "What happened?" Sarah asked. "How were you cursed?" Kale's laugh was hollow. "The old story. A prince too proud, too cruel, too certain of his own superiority. A witch I scorned, a curse I deserved. I was given a choice: learn to love and be loved in return before my 30th birthday, or remain a beast forever." His eyes gleamed with dark humor. "I have 6 months left. And I've learned that monsters don't inspire love. They inspire fear and hatred. As they should. You're talking to me instead of killing me," Sarah pointed out. "That's not very monstrous. Give me time." But there was no heat in the words. "You still haven't answered my question. Why come here? Why seek out a curse?" Sarah looked back toward the forest's edge, though she could no longer see the boundary stones. "Because I'm tired of being invisible, tired of being unwanted, tired of surviving in a place that would celebrate if I disappeared." She met his eyes. "If I'm going to be unwanted, I'd rather be unwanted somewhere honest about it." Kale was silent for a long moment. Then, "Show me." "What?" "Your hands." "Show me your hands." Confused, Sarah held out her hands. Work-roughened palms, calluses from years of labor, small scars from kitchen knives and sewing needles. Hands that told the story of a life spent serving others. Kale stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his massive form, could smell something wild and clean like pine and winter wind. He took one of her hands in his clawed fingers with surprising gentleness. "These are survivors' hands," he said softly. "Warriors' hands. Not the soft, useless hands of nobility who've never known real struggle." He looked up at her. "You think you're invisible, Sarah Ashwood? I see you. You walked into a cursed forest alone, with nothing but a kitchen knife and courage. I've known decorated soldiers with less bravery." Something warm unfurled in Sarah's chest. Something she hadn't felt in so long she'd almost forgotten its name. Being seen. Being recognized. "The wound," she said, her voice rough. "Let me help." Kale's eyes searched hers, looking for... what? Deception? Fear? Pity? Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him, because he nodded slowly. "This way. My den is deeper in the forest." He turned and began walking, and after only a heartbeat's hesitation, Sarah followed. She was following a cursed monster deeper into a forbidden forest. This was objectively insane, but as they walked, Kale adjusting his pace so she could keep up, occasionally glancing back to ensure she was still there, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. The forest grew darker around them, the trees pressing closer. Strange sounds echoed through the shadows, things that might have been birds, or might have been something far more sinister, but Kale moved with confidence, and Sarah found herself trusting that confidence. "You said you have 6 months left," Sarah said. 6 months to break the curse. 6 months for the impossible," Kale corrected. "The curse requires true love, mutual and freely given. Do you know how many have tried to break it? Dozens. All beautiful, all worthy, all completely repulsed by what I've become." His voice was bitter. "The curse is unbreakable. I've accepted that." "Have you?" Sarah asked. "Because it seems to me that someone who'd truly accepted being a monster wouldn't bother having conversations, wouldn't show concern about scaring village girls, wouldn't notice pain in others." Kale stopped walking so abruptly that Sarah nearly collided with his back. He turned to face her, and in the dim light filtering through the canopy, his expression was unreadable. "Careful, Sarah Ashwood," he said softly. "Hope is more dangerous than any curse. Hope will destroy you faster than I ever could. Then we'll be destroyed together," Sarah replied. "Because I came here hoping for something more than the life I left behind. And I think, despite everything, you're still hoping too." For a moment, the forest held its breath. Then Kale smiled, or what passed for a smile on his wolf-like features, and it transformed his face into something almost human. "You're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish," he said. "Can't I be both?" That rough laugh again. "Come on. The den's just ahead. Let's see if those survivors' hands of yours can fix what a hunter's trap broke. They continued deeper into the blackthorn forest, and with each step, Sarah felt the weight of her old life falling away. She didn't know what waited for her in those dark woods, didn't know if she could help break an ancient curse, or if she was walking toward her own doom. But for the first time in 17 years, she was walking toward something instead of just surviving, and that made all the difference. Chapter 3. The Den and the Truth. Cale's den was not what Sarah expected. She'd imagined a cave, perhaps, or a crude shelter of branches and leaves, something befitting a beast. Instead, he led her to a clearing where ancient stone ruins rose from the forest floor like broken teeth. What had once been a grand hunting lodge now stood half reclaimed by nature, its walls covered in moss and climbing vines, but still structurally sound. This was a royal retreat, Cale explained, pushing open a heavy wooden door that groaned on its hinges. Before the curse, before everything. Inside, the transformation was even more striking. Someone had clearly worked to maintain the space. A fire pit in the center held the remnants of a recent fire. Furs and blankets were arranged in a sleeping area. Books, dozens of them, lined makeshift shelves carved into the stone walls. In the corner sat a small table with woodworking tools and half-finished carvings. "You're an artist," Sarah said, picking up one of the carvings. It was a fox, rendered in exquisite detail, its wooden eyes seeming to hold secrets. "I was many things before the curse," Cale said quietly, "most of them terrible. The isolation has given me time to remember who I wanted to be before pride poisoned everything." He gestured to the far side of the room. "The wound is there. Right foreleg, as you noticed." He settled onto the furs, and in the firelight Sarah could finally see the injury properly. A deep gash ran along his foreleg, where a trap's teeth had bitten through fur and flesh. The wound was angry and inflamed, though someone, Cale himself, presumably had attempted to clean it. "This needs proper treatment," Sarah said, assessing the damage. "Do you have clean water? Something for bandages? There's a spring outside, always pure." "Bandages." Cale gestured to a chest in the corner. "Take whatever you need." Sarah worked efficiently, falling into the familiar rhythm of caregiving. She'd tended enough injuries on the manor's animals, and once, when a stable boy had been kicked by a horse, she'd sewn him up while the family's physician was away. Her hands knew what to do, even if her mind was still reeling from the impossibility of her situation. As she cleaned the wound, Cale watched her with those unsettling golden eyes. "You're good at this." "I'm good at being useful," Sarah replied. "It's how I survived." "That's not the same thing as living." She glanced up, surprised by the insight. "No, it's not." "Tell me," Cale said as she worked. "Tell me about the life you left behind. Help me understand what drives someone to choose a monster over humanity." So Sarah told him. The words spilled out as her hands moved stories of her father's death, her mother's remarriage, years of being erased from her own family. Elara's cruelty, Aldrich's dismissal, the slow suffocation of being unwanted. "They wanted to send me away," she finished, wrapping the cleaned wound with strips of cloth. "Find me a position in town, somewhere I'd be someone else's problem. And I realized I'd rather face an honest monster than spend one more day being invisible to people who should have loved me." Cale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I was that kind of person once. Before the curse, I didn't see the servants who made my life comfortable, didn't notice the subjects who suffered under my policies. I was so focused on my own glory that everyone else was just background noise." "What changed?" Sarah asked, tying off the bandage. "A woman named Morgana, a healer who came to the castle seeking help for her village. They were starving because I'd raised taxes to fund a pointless war. I had her thrown out, mocked her for thinking I'd care about peasants." His eyes were distant, lost in memory. "She returned that night, revealed herself as more than just a healer, and she gave me a gift, the curse that would teach me everything I'd refused to learn." "A gift?" Sarah couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. "Oh, yes, because the curse gave me something I never had before: time alone, with my own thoughts, my own actions, my own conscience. It stripped away the power and glory I'd used to distract myself from what I really was." He flexed his newly bandaged leg experimentally. It made me see everyone I'd dismissed, everyone I'd hurt, everyone I'd failed to see as human. And it did that by making me the thing people don't see as human. Sarah sat back, studying him. In the firelight, he looked almost majestic, powerful, and dangerous. Yes, but also sad in a way that went bone deep. Do you think you deserved it? The curse? Every day of it. Cale said without hesitation. The question isn't whether I deserved punishment. It's whether I'm capable of redemption. Before Sarah could respond, a sound echoed through the forest, distant but distinct. Barking. Dogs. Cale's head snapped up, his whole body going tense. No. What is it? Hunters. He rose swiftly, despite his injury. They come sometimes, thinking to claim the bounty on the beast of Blackthorn. Usually I can evade them easily, but with this wound. He looked at Sarah, and something like fear crossed his features. You need to hide. If they find you here with me, they'll think you're my prisoner, or worse, my accomplice. I am your accomplice, Sarah pointed out. I chose to be here. Sarah. No. She stood, surprised by her own certainty. I didn't come here to hide. I came here to stop being invisible. She grabbed her cloak. Is there another way out? Cale stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled that almost human expression that transformed his features. The back entrance. Through the old kitchens. But we'll need to move quickly. They extinguished the fire and gathered what they could carry. Cale moved with practiced efficiency despite his injury, leading Sarah through corridors choked with ivy and thyme. The barking was getting closer, accompanied now by men's voices and the clank of weapons. There, someone shouted. I saw movement in the lodge. Move, Cale growled, and they burst through a rear door into the forest. Behind them, the hunters poured into the den. Sarah could hear them ransacking the space, destroying Cale's books and carvings, the small life he'd built in isolation. They ran through the dark forest, Cale leading with sure-footed confidence despite the terrain. Sarah struggled to keep up, branches catching at her cloak, roots threatening to trip her. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This way, Cale whispered, pulling her into a hollow beneath an enormous fallen tree. Don't move, don't breathe. They pressed into the darkness together, his massive form sheltering hers as the hunters thundered past. So close Sarah could have reached out and touched them. Lost the trail, one hunter called. Impossible. The beast was injured, we had it cornered. Maybe it had help. This voice was different, smoother, educated, familiar. Search the area. Check for signs of anyone else in these woods. Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. Cale sensed her tension. He looked down at her in the shadows, questioning. Aldrich, she breathed, barely audible. My stepfather. Understanding flashed in Cale's eyes, followed by something darker. He pressed a clawed finger to his lips, urging silence. The hunters spread out, searching. Torchlight flickered through the gaps in their hiding place. Sarah held her breath, feeling the heat of Cale's body pressed against hers, his heart beating strong and fast beneath fur and muscle. Nothing here, a hunter called. Just animal tracks. Keep looking, Aldrich commanded. I know something's different tonight. I can feel it. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, mercifully, the hunters moved on, their voices and footsteps fading into the distance. Neither Sarah nor Cale moved immediately. They stayed pressed together in the darkness, both breathing hard, both processing what had just happened. Your stepfather leads the hunters, Cale said finally. Why? The bounty, Sarah guessed. Or maybe. A horrible thought occurred to her. Maybe he knows I came here. Maybe he's looking for both of us. Cale pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Sarah, why would your stepfather care if you disappeared? You said yourself they wanted you gone. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Because they need me to disappear the right way. If I just vanish? If I run away? People might ask questions. The village might talk. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But if I'm killed by the beast of Blackthorn? If my body is found torn apart by the cursed Alpha? Then I'm just a tragedy, a cautionary tale. They wanted you dead. Kale said slowly. That's why they made sure you knew about the festival. Made sure you'd be alone in the manor tonight. They expected you to run, and I walked right into their trap. Sarah laughed bitterly. I thought I was choosing freedom. I was just playing my part in their plan. Kale's expression darkened into something truly frightening, rage barely contained beneath fur and fang. They used you. Your own family used you. Former family, Sarah corrected. They stopped being family years ago. I just didn't want to see it. The hunters' voices had faded completely now. Cautiously, Kale emerged from the hiding spot, helping Sarah out. They stood in the moonlit forest, both aware that everything had changed. I can't go back to the den, Kale said. They know where it is now. They'll return with more men, more weapons. So what do we do? Kale looked at her, really looked at her, and Sarah saw the moment he made his decision. We go deeper, into the heart of the Blackthorn, where even hunters fear to tread. There's a place there, an old place, where the curse is strongest, where Morgana's magic still lingers. He paused. It's also where the answer lies. The way to break the curse, if such a thing exists. You've known about this place all along? I've avoided it, Kale admitted, because going there means accepting that the curse might be breakable, means risking hope. He offered her his clawed hand. But you were right earlier. Hope is dangerous. Maybe it's time I was dangerous too. Sarah looked at his hand, monstrous and yet somehow offering safety. Behind her lay a village that had never wanted her. A family that had plotted her death. Ahead lay dark woods and darker magic, a cursed prince, and an impossible quest. She took his hand. Lead the way, she said. Let's find this place. Let's break your curse. Our curse, Kale corrected softly. The moment you walked into these woods, you became part of this story, Sarah Ashwood. For better or worse. For better or worse, Sarah echoed. And together, they walked deeper into the Blackthorn forest, leaving behind the hunters and the life Sarah had known. She didn't look back. There was nothing behind her worth saving. Only ahead, in the darkness and danger. Was there a chance at something real? Something worth fighting for? Chapter 4. Into the deep woods. The forest changed the deeper they went. The trees grew massive ancient things with trunks so wide 3 men couldn't circle them with linked arms. Their bark was black as charcoal, twisted into patterns that looked almost like faces frozen in silent screams. The canopy overhead wove so thick that even moonlight couldn't penetrate, leaving them in a darkness so complete. Sarah had to trust Kale's guidance completely. Stay close, he murmured, his golden eyes the only light in the blackness. The deep forest doesn't follow normal rules. Time moves differently here. Space bends. If you wander off, I might never find you again. Sarah kept her hand on his shoulder, feeling the shift and bunch of muscle beneath fur as he navigated terrain she couldn't see. The wound she'd bandaged seemed to be bothering him less, whether from her treatment or simple adrenaline, she couldn't tell. Strange sounds echoed around them, not animal calls, exactly, but something older. Whispers that might have been wind through leaves, or might have been voices speaking languages dead before humans walked the earth. Once, Sarah thought she saw lights dancing between the trees, pale blue and sickly green, bobbing like lanterns carried by invisible hands. Don't look at them, Kale warned. Don't follow them. They're not friendly. What are they? Echoes. Memories of magic so old it's forgotten what it was supposed to be. The Blackthorn was a place of power long before Morgana cursed me. She just knew how to tap into what was already here. They walked for what felt like hours, though Sarah's sense of time had grown fuzzy. The darkness, the strange sounds, the impossible trees, it all blurred together into a waking dream. She found herself leaning more heavily on Kale, her exhaustion catching up with her. Rest, he said finally, guiding her to sit against one of the massive trees. We're safe here, for now. How can you tell? Kale gestured around them. See how the bark faces away from us in a circle? These old trees are protective. They remember when humans and magic lived in balance. They'll shelter those who don't mean harm. Sarah looked around and realized he was right. The trees formed a natural clearing, their twisted trunks creating a barrier that felt almost deliberate. Safe, protected. Kale settled beside her, his bulk radiating warmth in the cold forest air. Without thinking, Sarah leaned against him, too tired to maintain proper distance from a creature that should terrify her. He stiffened for a moment, then carefully, hesitantly, adjusted so she could rest more comfortably against his side. "Thank you," she murmured, "for not leaving me behind when the hunters came. Thank you for not running from me when you had the chance." His voice rumbled through his chest, oddly soothing. "Most people would have. Most people should have. I'm not most people." "No," Cale agreed softly. "You're not." They sat in companionable silence for a while. Sarah's eyes began to drift closed, exhaustion pulling at her. But Cale's voice called her back. "Tell me something," he said. "If you could have anything, if this curse didn't exist, if your family had loved you, if the world was exactly as you wanted it, what would you choose?" Sarah considered the question. Once, she would have said she wanted her old life back, her father alive, her mother loving, a family that wanted her. But now, sitting in a cursed forest with a monster who saw her more clearly than her own blood ever had, those old wishes felt hollow. "I'd want to matter," she said finally. "Not to be useful, not to serve a purpose, but to genuinely matter to someone. To be chosen, not because I'm convenient, or because there's no other option, but because someone looked at me, really saw me, and decided I was worth keeping." Cale was quiet for a long moment. "That's what I wanted too. Before the curse, I was surrounded by people constantly, courtiers, servants, advisors, admirers. But none of them saw me. They saw my crown, my power, my position. If I'd disappeared, they'd have mourned the loss of what I could do for them, not who I actually was. And now I'm truly alone. And I've learned the difference between being surrounded by people who don't see you and being isolated by people who refuse to see you. One is loneliness, the other is honest." Sarah turned to look up at him. In the darkness, his golden eyes glowed with an inner light. "I see you, Cale, not a prince, not a beast, just you." His eyes searched hers. "What do you see?" "Someone who's been in pain for a long time. Someone who made mistakes and is trying to atone for them. Someone who carves beautiful things and reads books and talks to lost girls instead of eating them." She smiled slightly. "Someone who's more human than most humans I've known." Cale made a sound, half laugh, half something that might have been a sob. "You're going to ruin me, Sarah Ashwood. You're going to give me hope, and hope is the cruelest torture of all." "Good," Sarah said fiercely. "You should hope. You should believe you can be more than this curse, because I believe it." "Why?" The word was almost desperate. "You've known me for hours. Why would you believe in me when people who knew me for years never did?" "Because," Sarah said simply, "you're the first person in 17 years who's treated me like I matter, like I'm real, like I'm worth seeing." She reached up and touched his face, the fur rough beneath her palm, the bone and muscle solid and real. "So yes, I believe in you, because you believed in me first." Cale closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. For just a moment, Sarah could see past the curse, past the fur and fangs, to the man trapped inside, broken, lonely, desperate for redemption he didn't think he deserved. They were both monsters, she realized. Both cursed in their own ways. Both invisible to the world that should have loved them. But they saw each other, and maybe that was enough. "Sleep," Cale said softly, pulling away gently. "We have a long walk ahead tomorrow. The heart of the forest is still hours away. What will we find there?" "Truth," Cale said. "Whatever that means. Morgana left something there when she cursed me, a trial, a test, a way forward. I've never been brave enough to seek it out before." He looked at her. "But I'm brave enough now." Sarah settled against him again, her eyes growing heavy. "We'll face it together." "Together," Cale echoed, and the word sounded like a promise. Sarah dreamed. She dreamed of a grand ballroom filled with light and music. She wore a gown of silver that caught the light like moonlight on water. People danced around her, their faces blurred and indistinct. She was looking for someone, searching desperately through the crowd. Then the music stopped. The dancers froze, and from the shadows stepped a woman whose beauty was as terrible as winter frost. "Little lost girl," the woman said, her voice like breaking ice. "Do you think you can break what I have made? Do you think your small courage is enough? Who are you?" Sarah demanded. "I am consequence. I am justice. I am the price of cruelty." The woman smiled, and it was a predator's smile. "I am Morgana, and this curse is my masterwork. It cannot be broken by love. Love is too simple, too easy, too clean." "Then how?" Sarah asked. "How can it be broken?" Morgana stepped closer, and Sarah saw that her eyes were the same gold as Kale's. "By sacrifice, by truth, by choosing what you cannot bear to lose." She reached out and touched Sarah's face with fingers cold as death. "Are you prepared to pay that price, little lost girl? Are you prepared to lose everything to save him?" "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Then prove it." Morgana's smile widened. "Prove you're worthy of breaking my curse. Prove you're more than just another lost girl running from her pain." The ballroom dissolved. The woman vanished. And Sarah woke gasping to find dawn light filtering through the canopy above the first light she'd seen since entering the deep forest. Kale was awake already, watching her with concern. "Nightmare. Vision," Sarah corrected. "I think Morgana came to me," she said. "She said the curse can't be broken by love alone, that it requires sacrifice." Kale's expression grew grim. "What kind of sacrifice?" She didn't say. "But Kale." Sarah gripped his arm. "She's testing us. This whole thing, the curse, the trial ahead, it's all a test. A test I've been failing for 7 years." Kale said bitterly. "No. A test you've been preparing for." Sarah stood, brushing dirt from her dress. "You weren't ready before. You were still the prince who didn't see people as real. But now you're ready. How can you be so certain?" "Because you see me," Sarah said simply. "And that means you've learned what she wanted you to learn. Now, we just have to prove it." Kale rose as well, towering over her in the dawn light. "The heart of the forest is just ahead. Once we enter, there's no turning back. The trial will begin, and it won't end until we break the curse or die trying." "Then let's not die," Sarah said, with more confidence than she felt. Kale's laugh was surprised and genuine. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most foolish. I told you before, I'm both." They gathered what little they'd brought and set off through the forest. The trees here were different, again, pale as bone, their branches bare despite it being autumn. They grew in strange patterns, forming archways and corridors that looked almost deliberate. "A path. This is it," Kale said. "The way to the heart. Once we walk this path, the forest will test us. It will show us truths we don't want to see. Force us to face what we've been running from." "I'm ready," Sarah said. "Are you?" Kale looked at her seriously. "Your stepfather is out there. Your family. The life you fled. The forest might make you face them again. Might make you choose." "I already chose," Sarah said firmly. "I chose the moment I walked into these woods. Whatever the forest shows me, whatever it asks of me, my answer won't change." Kale studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then let's break this curse." They stepped onto the pale path together, and the blackthorn forest came alive around them. The trees began to whisper not the wordless sounds from before, but actual words. Voices Sarah recognized. Her mother's voice, soft and disappointed. Alara's cruel laughter, Aldrich's dismissive commands. Worthless girl, plain girl, unwanted girl. Kale's ears flattened against his skull. He heard voices too, she could tell from the pain in his eyes. "Don't listen," Sarah said, grabbing his hand. "They're not real. Just echoes." "Are they?" Kale asked. "Or are they the truest things we'll ever hear, the words that define us?" "No," Sarah said fiercely. "We define ourselves, not them, never them. Never." The path wound deeper, and the voices grew louder. But Sarah held tight to Kale's hand, and Kale held tight to hers, and together they walked toward the heart of the curse, toward truth, toward sacrifice, toward whatever ending good or terrible awaited them there. Chapter 5. The Opportunity and the First Trial. The Heart's Challenge. Minutes. 17 to 21. The heart of the Blackthorn Forest was a place that shouldn't exist. The pale path opened into a circular clearing where reality felt thin, stretched too tight over something vast and incomprehensible. At the center stood a pool of water, so still it looked like polished glass, reflecting not the sky above, but something else. Something that shifted and changed when Sarah tried to focus on it. Around the pool, 7 stone pillars rose from the ground, each carved with symbols that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them. The air here thrummed with power, making Sarah's teeth ache and her skin prickle. "Welcome, Prince Kael," a voice said everywhere and nowhere at once. Not Morgana's voice from Sarah's dream, but something older, more fundamental, the voice of the forest itself. "You have finally come, and you have brought an unexpected variable." Sarah felt the forest's attention focus on her like a physical weight. She fought the urge to hide behind Kael. "She is Sarah Ashwood," Kael said, his voice steady despite the tension in his body. "She came here of her own free will. She is important." "Important," the forest mused. "Yes, we see what she is, what she could be, what she might become." A pause. "Very well, the trial may proceed. But know this, the curse requires balance. What was broken by cruelty must be mended by courage. What was lost to pride must be found through humility. And what was taken by selfishness must be restored by sacrifice." The water in the pool began to glow with a soft silver light. Images formed on its surface Kael as he had been before the curse. Tall, handsome, proud, dressed in royal finery, his human face cold and dismissive as he turned away from someone kneeling before him. Morgana, younger, more human-looking than in Sarah's dream, pleading for her village. "Your first trial," the forest said. "Face what you were, acknowledge what you did, speak the truth of your sins aloud, holding nothing back. Only in complete honesty can redemption begin." Kael stared at the pool, his golden eyes reflecting the silver light. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped forward, his voice rough but clear. "I was Prince Kael Thornwood, heir to the Northern Territories. I was vain, cruel, and blind to anything beyond my own glory." He paused, watching his younger self in the water. "When Morgana came to me, begging for relief for her starving village, I laughed. I told her that peasants were meant to suffer, that their pain was the cost of my comfort. I told her she was too ugly to be worth my time." The image shifted, showed Morgana's face twisting with rage and hurt. "She revealed her true nature then," Kael continued. "Showed me she was a sorceress of considerable power. She could have killed me, should have, probably. Instead, she gave me this curse, made me the thing I'd called her ugly, monstrous, unworthy of love." His voice cracked. "And she was right. I deserved every moment of these 7 years. Every night alone, every person who fled from me in terror, every reminder that I am nothing like the beautiful prince I once was. Because that prince was a monster wearing a human face. At least now the outside matches what I was inside." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes at the raw pain in his voice. "But the worst part," Kael whispered, "wasn't becoming a beast. It was realizing how many people I'd hurt before the curse, how many lives I'd destroyed with my casual cruelty, how many villages suffered because I needed another monument to my glory, how many servants I worked to death because I didn't see them as human." He looked up from the pool. "I was a monster long before Morgana cursed me. She just made sure everyone else could see it too." The silver light pulsed once, bright and almost approving. The image in the pool dissolved. "Truth spoken," the forest said. "The first barrier falls. But truth acknowledged is not truth accepted. You have named your sins, Prince. But do you believe you deserve forgiveness?" "No," Kael said without hesitation. "I don't." "Why not?" "Because some things can't be forgiven. Some sins are too great. The people I hurt, the lives I destroyed, saying sorry doesn't bring them back. Acknowledging what I did doesn't undo it." His hands clenched into fists. "I can spend the rest of my life trying to be better, but that doesn't erase the man I was." "Then why try?" the forest asked. "If you believe forgiveness is impossible, why seek to break the curse at all?" Kael opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Sarah, uncertainty in his eyes. And Sarah understood. This was her trial too. She stepped forward, joining Kale at the pool's edge. Because forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing a different future. The forest's attention shifted to her, heavy and assessing. Explain, Sarah Ashwood. Kale was cruel, Sarah said. He did terrible things. But if he stayed trapped in those sins forever, refused to grow or change, that would be the real tragedy. Not because he deserves forgiveness, she looked at Kale, but because everyone deserves the chance to become better than they were. Pretty words, the forest said. But can you prove them? Can you look at his sins, truly see them, feel them, and still choose him? Show me, Sarah said, her voice steady even as her heart hammered. Show me what he did. Don't spare me anything. Sarah? No. Kale started. But the pool was already responding. The silver light exploded outward, engulfing them both. Sarah found herself standing in a throne room of breathtaking grandeur. No, not standing. Watching. Like a ghost. As the scene played out before her, Kale sat on a golden throne, young and beautiful, and radiating arrogant power. Before him knelt an old man, thin to the point of starvation, pleading for tax relief. My lord, please, the old man begged. The harvest was poor this year. We've given everything we can. If you take more, my grandchildren will starve. Prince Kale examined his fingernails, bored. Then let them starve. Perhaps it will teach them to be more productive. My lord, remove him, Kale said with a dismissive wave. His poverty offends me. The scene shifted. A young servant girl, barely 14, stumbling under the weight of a heavy bucket. She spilled a few drops of water on the pristine marble floor. Prince Kale's face twisted with rage. Clumsy wretch. 50 lashes. Maybe that will teach you to be more careful. Please, my lord. The girl sobbed. It was an accident. 75 lashes. Keep talking and I'll make it 100. The scene shifted again and again, each one showing a different cruelty, a different moment of casual evil. Kale ordering a village burned because they couldn't meet his tax quota. Kale laughing as a court jester was beaten for telling a joke he didn't like. Kale coldly dismissing his own mother's plea to show mercy to a condemned prisoner. On and on it went, each cruelty worse than the last. Sarah watched it all, feeling sick, feeling horror, feeling the weight of Kale's sins pressing down on her like a physical force. This was the man she'd chosen to help. This was the monster who'd earned his curse. The visions finally stopped, leaving Sarah gasping and disoriented back at the pool's edge. Kale stood several feet away, his head bowed, unable to meet her eyes. You see now, he said quietly. You see what I was. What I am. You should run, Sarah. Run, and don't look back. Sarah's hands were shaking. The images had been so vivid, so real. She'd felt the suffering of every victim, the weight of every cruelty. Part of her wanted to do exactly what Kale suggested, run back to the village, face the hunters, face anything except the truth of what she'd seen. But then she looked at him. Really looked at him. Kale stood hunched, his powerful frame somehow diminished. His golden eyes were dark with shame and self-loathing. His clawed hands trembled. This wasn't the proud prince from the visions. This was someone broken by the weight of his own sins. Someone who'd spent 7 years carrying that weight alone. I see what you were, Sarah said finally. I see the monster you chose to be. Kale flinched as if struck. But I also see what you've become, she continued, stepping closer. I see someone who acknowledges his sins instead of making excuses. Someone who believes he deserves to suffer. Someone who's been alone for 7 years because he thinks he's too broken to be saved. She reached out and took his clawed hand in both of hers. You were terrible, Kale. You were everything wrong with power and privilege. But you're not that person anymore. The man in those visions would never have talked to a lost girl in the forest. Would never have let her tend his wounds. Would never have protected her from hunters at risk to himself. That doesn't erase what I did, Kale said, his voice barely a whisper. No, Sarah agreed. Nothing erases it. You'll carry those sins forever. And you should. But carrying them doesn't mean you can't also carry hope. It doesn't mean you can't try to be better. She squeezed his hand. I choose to help you, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I've seen what you're trying to become, and that person is worth saving." Cale looked at her then, really looked at her, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why? After everything you saw, why would you?" "Because someone once told me that hope is dangerous," Sarah said with a small smile. "And I've decided to be dangerous too." The pool flared brilliant silver, so bright they both had to shield their eyes. When the light faded, one of the 7 pillars around the clearing had changed the symbols on it now, glowing with soft gold light. "The first trial is complete," the forest announced. "Truth spoken, truth witnessed, truth accepted." The seal weakens. A pause. "But 6 trials remain. 6 tests to prove your worth. 6 chances to fail, and remain cursed forever." "What's the next trial?" Sarah asked. "Rest first," the forest said, and there was almost something like kindness in its ancient voice. "You will need your strength for what comes next. The trial of truth is the easiest. The trials ahead will demand more than words." The air grew heavy, pressing down on them like a weighted blanket. Sarah's exhaustion came rushing back all at once. Beside her, Cale swayed slightly. "There," the forest said. A section of the clearing's edge shimmered, and Sarah saw a small shelter appear, simple but dry, with soft moss forming a natural bed. "Sleep. Dawn will bring the second trial." Sarah and Cale stumbled to the shelter. They collapsed onto the moss, too exhausted to care about propriety or strangeness. Sarah's last thought before sleep claimed her was that Cale's heartbeat, strong and steady beside her, sounded like a promise, like hope, like home. Chapter 6. The Mirror of Souls. Sarah woke to find Cale already awake, sitting at the edge of the shelter and staring at the pool. Dawn light, or what passed for it in this timeless place, filtered through the ancient trees, casting everything in shades of silver and gold. "How long have you been awake?" she asked, sitting up and rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Hours, or minutes. Time doesn't work right here." He glanced back at her. "I keep thinking about what you said, about carrying sins and hope together, having regrets, about you being here, every moment." He turned fully to face her. "But also grateful. For the first time in 7 years, I don't feel completely alone." Sarah joined him at the shelter's entrance. In the growing light, the pool at the clearing's center looked different, darker, more ominous. The one pillar that had glowed gold last night now pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. "The second trial approaches," the forest's voice announced, making them both jump. "Are you prepared to continue?" "Do we have a choice?" Cale asked. "There is always a choice. You could leave now, return to your separate exiles, live out your days apart and alone. The curse would remain, but you would be safe from further trials." Sarah and Cale looked at each other. She saw the question in his golden eyes. "What do you want?" "We continue," Sarah said firmly. "Together." "Together," Cale echoed. "Very well." The pool began to darken, its surface turning from silver to black as ink. The first trial tested truth. The second will test something far more difficult, vulnerability. The water rose from the pool, defying gravity, forming a vertical wall of liquid darkness. Within it, images began to form, but not of the past. Of now. Of Sarah and Kyle themselves. "Step forward," the forest commanded. "Look into the mirror of souls. See yourself as you truly are, not as you wish to be, not as you pretend to be, but as your deepest self knows you to be. Speak that truth aloud. Hold nothing back." Cale approached the mirror first, his steps heavy with dread. Sarah watched as his reflection formed in the dark water, but it wasn't his cursed form that appeared. It was him as a man. Young, handsome, whole. But the eyes were wrong. Hollow, empty, dead inside. "I see." Cale's voice was rough. "I see the man I could have been if the curse had never happened. Still beautiful. Still human." He paused, struggling with the words. "Still empty. Still cruel. Still a monster in a pretty shell." The reflection shifted, showing the beast form Cale wore now. But this version's eyes were alive, hurt, yes, but feeling, capable of compassion, capable of growth. The curse made me a monster on the outside, Cale continued, his voice breaking. But it killed the monster inside. And I don't know. I don't know if I can be both. If the curse breaks, if I become human again, will I become that hollow prince? Will I forget everything I've learned? Will I stop seeing people as real? Is that what you fear most? The forest asked. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. I'm terrified that being human means being him again. That the beast is the only version of me capable of humanity. Sarah's heart clenched. She'd never considered that angle, that Cale might actually fear breaking the curse because of who he might become. But that's not your deepest fear, the forest pressed. Look deeper, Prince. See the truth you hide even from yourself. Cale stared into the mirror for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was raw with pain. I'm afraid that I don't deserve to be saved, that Sarah's faith in me is misplaced, that she'll realize she's wasting her time on someone too broken to fix, and she'll leave. And I'll be alone again. And this time, the loneliness will kill me because I'll know what I lost. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Cale's shoulders slumped, as if speaking the words had physically drained him. The dark mirror pulsed once, accepting his truth. Then it shifted, the surface rippling as the reflection changed. Sarah Ashwood, the forest said, your turn. Step forward, face yourself. Sarah's legs felt like lead, but she forced herself to approach the mirror. Her reflection formed in the dark water, a girl in a ragged dress, with tangled dark hair and shadows under her eyes. A girl who looked tired, defeated, invisible. What do you see? The forest asked. I see. Sarah swallowed hard. I see someone who ran away. Someone who was so desperate to escape that she walked into a cursed forest without a plan, without supplies, without any idea what she was doing. The reflection didn't change, just stared back at her with judgment in its eyes. I see someone who tells herself she came here for freedom, for choice, for something brave and meaningful. Sarah's voice grew softer. But maybe I just came here to die. Maybe I was hoping the monster would do what I didn't have the courage to do myself. Sarah, Cale started, but the forest silenced him. Continue, it commanded. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. I spent 17 years being invisible, being unwanted. And part of me believed them. Believed I was worthless. Plain. A burden. Coming here wasn't bravery. It was giving up. The reflection shifted, showing Sarah as she'd been in the manor, hollow-eyed, going through motions, already half dead inside. But that's not your deepest truth either, the forest said. Look closer. See what you hide even from yourself. Sarah forced herself to look deeper into the mirror, past the exhaustion and defeat, past the girl who'd given up, to something underneath, something she'd been terrified to acknowledge. I'm afraid, she whispered, that I'm using Cale, that I latched onto his curse because it gave me purpose, a reason to matter, a story where I could be the hero instead of the victim. Her voice cracked. I'm afraid that I don't actually care about breaking his curse. I just care about feeling important, about being seen. The words felt like poison leaving her mouth, but once started, she couldn't stop. I'm afraid that the moment the curse breaks, the moment Cale is human again and doesn't need me anymore, I'll go back to being nothing, invisible, worthless. And this time I'll know exactly how meaningless I really am, because I'll have had purpose and lost it. She looked at Cale, tears streaming down her face. I'm afraid that I'm just as selfish as you were, that I'm using your pain to make myself feel better, that I'm not actually helping you, I'm helping myself at your expense. The silence that followed was devastating. Sarah wanted to run, to hide, to take back every word. But the mirror held her trapped in her own truth. Then Cale spoke, his voice gentle. You think wanting to matter makes you selfish? Doesn't it? Sarah's voice was small. No, Cale said firmly. He approached her, standing beside her, so they both faced the mirror. Sarah, everyone wants to matter. Everyone wants to be seen. That's not selfishness, that's being human. But I'm using you. And I'm using you. Cale interrupted. You think I protected you from the hunters purely out of altruism? You think I brought you to this trial because I'm noble? He shook his head. I did it because for the first time in 7 years, someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster. And I was selfish enough to want to keep that. To keep you." He took her hand, his clawed fingers gentle around hers. "We're both broken, Sarah. We're both using each other to feel less alone. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's just connection. Real connection, where we both admit we need each other." "The beast speaks wisdom," the forest said, and there was approval in its ancient voice. "You have both named your deepest fears, acknowledged your selfish truths, and in doing so, you have revealed the most important truth of all. You are not savior and saved. You are two broken people choosing to be broken together." The dark mirror rippled, then shattered into droplets that fell back into the pool with musical tinkles. Another pillar began to glow, this one, with soft silver light. "The second trial is complete," the forest announced. "Vulnerability accepted. Fears named. Selfishness acknowledged. The seal weakens further." Sarah sagged with relief, and Cale's arm came around her, steadying her. They stood together at the pool's edge, both emotionally raw, both exposed in ways they'd never been before. "That was harder than facing my sins," Cale said quietly. "Much harder," Sarah agreed. "Admitting what I did wrong is one thing. Admitting why I'm really here." She shook her head. "I've never been that honest with anyone, including myself." "Neither have I." Cale looked down at her. "Does it change anything? Knowing that we're both being selfish? That we're using each other?" Sarah considered the question. Did it change anything to know she'd come here partly because she needed purpose? That she'd latched onto Cale's curse as much for herself as for him? "No," she said finally. "It doesn't change that I want to help you. It doesn't change that I choose to be here. It just makes it honest." She met his eyes. "I'm helping you because I need to feel important, and that's okay. Because you're accepting my help because you need to feel less alone, and that's okay too." Cale's expression softened into something that looked almost like wonder. "How are you so wise? You're 22 and you understand things I couldn't grasp at 30. "Not wise," Sarah corrected, "just tired of lying, to others and to myself." She squeezed his hand. "What happens next? How many more trials?" 5 more, the forest answered. 5 more tests before the curse can break. But you've passed the hardest ones. Truth and vulnerability are the foundations. What comes next will test your strength, your loyalty, your sacrifice." A pause. "Rest now. The third trial begins at dusk." The shelter had changed while they'd been at the pool. It was larger now, with actual walls instead of just moss. A small fire burned in a pit at the center, and beside it sat provisions, bread, dried fruit, a skin of water. "The forest is taking care of us," Cale observed. "Because we're doing what it wants," Sarah said. "Breaking the curse." They settled by the fire, both exhausted from the emotional ordeal. Sarah noticed that Cale's wound, the one she'd bandaged the night before, had healed almost completely. Only a thin scar remained beneath his fur. "It's the trials," Cale explained when he saw her looking. "Each one we pass makes the curse weaker, lets more of my true self through." He flexed his clawed hand experimentally. "I can almost feel it, the edges of humanity, like I'm remembering what it felt like to be fully human." "Are you scared?" Sarah asked. "Of becoming human again?" "Terrified," Cale admitted, "but also hopeful, which is worse, honestly. Hope is so much more painful than despair." Sarah leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in a way that should have been impossible with someone who looked like a monster. "Tell me about him. The prince you were before, not the cruel parts. I've seen those. Tell me about the good parts." "There must have been some." Cale was quiet for a long moment. "I loved music. Used to play the lute, actually. Not well, but enthusiastically." A soft laugh. "I loved riding the feeling of wind in my face, the freedom of speed. I loved winter mornings when everything was covered in fresh snow, and the world felt clean and new." "You can love those things again," Sarah said. "When the curse breaks." "If it breaks." "When it breaks," Sarah insisted. "We've passed 2 trials already. We can pass the rest." Cale looked down at her, something shifting in his expression. "You really believe that, don't you?" Even after admitting you're partly here for yourself, you still believe we can do this. Of course I do. My selfishness doesn't make me wrong. She smiled. Besides, we're dangerous now, remember? We have hope. And hope is the most dangerous thing in the world. Cale's laugh rumbled through his chest. You're going to be the death of me, Sarah Ashwood. Or the life of you, Sarah countered. We'll see which. They sat together as the strange, timeless light shifted around them, moving toward whatever dusk meant in this place. Two broken people, using each other, needing each other, choosing each other despite all the logical reasons not to. And in the pool at the clearing's center, the water began to darken again. The third trial was approaching. Chapter 7. The Choice Between Worlds. As dusk fell, or what passed for dusk in the heart of the blackthorn, the forest came alive with sound. Not the ominous whispers from before, but something different. Music, laughter, the sounds of celebration. Sarah stood at the edge of the clearing, listening. What is that? The third trial beginning, Cale said, his voice tense. He'd been pacing for the last hour, unable to settle. The forest is creating something, building a test. The pool's surface rippled, and from its depths rose a vision, but this one was different from the reflections they'd seen before. This one was three-dimensional, solid, real. The clearing transformed around them, the ancient trees fading to reveal a grand ballroom. Sarah gasped. It was the same ballroom from her dream, all crystal chandeliers and polished marble, filled with people in beautiful gowns and fine suits. An orchestra played in the corner, the music sweet and intoxicating. The scent of roses and wine filled the air. Welcome to the trial of loyalty, the forest announced. You have spoken truth. You have revealed vulnerability. Now you must prove that your words are matched by action. A figure emerged from the crowd, tall, handsome, wearing a crown of silver. It took Sarah a moment to recognize him. Cale. Not as the beast, but as he'd been before the curse. Young, beautiful, radiating power and charisma. But it wasn't really him. This was an illusion, a creation of the forest. Prince Cale. The false Cale said, his voice smooth and charming. Or should I say, the beast. How the mighty have fallen. He gestured to the ballroom. Do you remember this? Your life before? The power, the luxury, the adoration? Beside her, the real Cale stood rigid, his clawed fists clenched. This could be yours again, the false Cale continued. All you have to do is accept it. Step into this form. Become who you were. The curse will break, and you'll have everything you lost. That's not how it works, Cale growled. The curse requires love. Does it? The false Cale smiled. Or does it simply require acceptance? Perhaps you've been misunderstanding all along. Perhaps all you need to do is accept who you really are. A prince who made mistakes but deserves his throne back. From the crowd, another figure emerged. A woman beautiful, regal, wearing a gown of midnight blue. She looked at Cale with longing. My prince, she said, her voice like honey. I have waited for you. Waited for you to remember who you truly are. Come back to us. Come back to yourself. Forget this, beast form. Forget the guilt. Forget the pain. Just be the prince again. This is a trick, Sarah said, but her voice sounded thin, unconvincing even to herself. Is it? The false Cale turned his attention to Sarah. Or is it simply showing the prince what he could have? What he deserves? He's suffered for 7 years. Surely that's enough penance. He gestured dismissively at Sarah. Why should he spend more time in exile with a peasant girl when he could have his kingdom back? The words stung, but Sarah forced herself to focus on the real Cale beside her. His expression was agonized, torn between desire and disgust. Cale, she said softly, this isn't real. It's a test. Prince Cale, the woman in blue interrupted, moving closer. Don't listen to her. She's just a lost girl who latched onto you for her own purposes. She admitted it herself, didn't she? She's using you to feel important. Sarah flinched. That had been her deepest fear, spoken in the second trial. And now the forest was weaponizing it. She doesn't love you, the false Cale added. How could she? Look at what you've become. No, she loves the idea of you. The broken prince she can save. The curse she can break. Once you're human again, once you don't need her anymore, she'll leave, just like everyone else. That's not true, Sarah protested, but doubt crept into her voice. Was it true? Would she lose interest in Cale once he was human? Once he had his kingdom back, and didn't need a peasant girl to bandage his wounds? Prove it, the forest's voice commanded, cutting through the illusion. Sarah Ashwood, you claim loyalty to this prince. But what if that loyalty costs you everything? The ballroom shimmered and changed. Now Sarah saw a different scene. Greystone Village, but transformed. Clean, prosperous, thriving. And there, in the village square, stood her mother, not the cold woman who'd rejected her, but the mother from her childhood. Warm, loving, arms open wide. Sarah, darling, her mother called. Come home. Come back to us. We were wrong to treat you so poorly. We see that now. Come home and be loved. Be part of a family again. Beside her mother appeared Alara, but this Alara looked humble, regretful. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry for how I treated you. Please forgive me. Please come home. Even Aldrich was there, looking chagrined. We need you, Sarah. The household has fallen apart without you. You were always the heart of our home. Please. Come back. Everything Sarah had ever wanted. A family that loved her. A place where she belonged. Recognition and acceptance. All you have to do is leave, the forest said. Walk away from the beast. Return to your village. And all of this will be yours. The family you craved. The love you deserved. The life you should have had. Sarah stared at the vision, her heart aching. This was the fantasy she'd harbored for years, that someday her mother would wake up and remember loving her. That Alara would apologize, that she'd finally belong. But, the forest continued, if you choose to stay with the prince, your family will never forgive you. You'll be cast out completely, branded a traitor who consorted with monsters. You'll lose any chance of ever having a normal life. Choose, the false Cale said. Your prince has his choice. Return to power and glory, or stay a beast in exile. And you have yours. Reclaim your family and home, or throw your life away on an impossible curse. The ballroom split down the middle. On one side, the illusion of Cale's restored kingdom, power, beauty, luxury. On the other, Sarah's village family, love, belonging. And in the center, the real Cale and Sarah stood together, both faced with everything they'd ever wanted. Make your choice, the forest commanded. And make it now. This is the test of loyalty. What do you truly value? What are you willing to sacrifice? Sarah looked at the vision of her mother. The love she'd craved for 17 years, finally offered freely. All she had to do was walk away from this clearing, leave Cale to his curse, return to a life that made sense. But then she looked at Cale, the real Cale, not the illusion. The beast who'd seen her when everyone else looked through her, who'd protected her, who'd been vulnerable with her, who'd admitted his fears and selfishness, because she'd admitted hers first. The beast who'd become more human than any human she'd known. No, Sarah said. No? The forest sounded almost surprised. No, Sarah repeated, stronger now. She turned away from the vision of her family. That's not real. My mother doesn't love me, she never did. Alara isn't sorry she enjoyed hurting me. And Aldrich. She laughed bitterly. Aldrich would kill me if it was convenient. She walked to Cale's side, taking his clawed hand in hers. This is real. This beast who talks to me like I matter, who admits his fears, who's trying to be better than he was. This is real. And I choose it. Even if it costs you everything? The forest pressed. I had nothing, Sarah said. You can't lose what you never had. But here, with Cale, I have purpose. Partnership, someone who sees me. She squeezed his hand. I'm not leaving. Cale stared at her, his golden eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Sarah, your turn, the forest said. Prince Cale, will you reclaim your kingdom? Your power? Your beautiful human form? Or will you stay a beast with a peasant girl who admitted she's using you for her own purposes? Cale looked at the vision of his former self. Sarah could see the longing in his expression, the desire to be human again, to have hands instead of claws, to see a face in mirrors that didn't inspire terror. But then he looked at her. Really looked at her. When I was that prince, Kale said slowly, I had everything that vision shows. Power. Luxury. Beauty. People who claimed to love me. He turned away from the illusion. But I was empty, hollow, cruel. That prince would have ground Sarah beneath his heel without a second thought. Would have dismissed her as unworthy of notice. He pulled Sarah closer to his side. But this beast, this cursed, broken thing I've become, this version of me sees a woman who walked into a dark forest with nothing but courage, who faced her deepest fears and admitted her selfish truths, who chose me even after seeing the worst things I've ever done. His voice grew stronger. So no, I don't want that kingdom. I don't want that life. Because that life made me a monster wearing a human face, and I'd rather be a beast learning to be human than that prince ever again. The ballroom shattered like glass. The illusions dissolved. False Kale, Sarah's family, all of it disappearing like smoke. The clearing returned, the ancient trees reappearing, the pool at its center rippling with approval. The trial of loyalty is complete, the forest announced, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in its voice. You have chosen each other over comfort, over family, over everything you thought you wanted. You have proven that your words are matched by action. A third pillar began to glow, this one, with deep emerald light. But something else was happening too. Kale gasped, his body convulsing. Sarah grabbed him as he fell to his knees, his form flickering beast, then man, then beast again. Kale, Sarah cried. What's happening? The curse, he gasped. It's weakening. 3 trials past means. He looked up at her, and she saw his face was changing, becoming more human, his muzzle shortening, his ears shifting position. It means I'm closer to breaking free. For just a moment, she saw him fully human, dark hair, strong features, those golden eyes in a human face. Beautiful, but in a different way than the illusory prince. This face was marked by suffering and growth. This face had earned its humanity. Then the beast form returned, but changed. More refined. Less creature, more man. The remaining trials will be harder, the forest warned. You have proven truth, vulnerability, and loyalty. What remains will test you in ways that will break you if you're not strong enough. We're strong enough, Sarah said fiercely, helping Kale to his feet. We'll pass whatever comes next. Such certainty, the forest mused. We shall see. Rest now. The 4th trial will test that strength you claim. We shall discover if it's real, or just another pretty lie you tell yourselves. The shelter had grown larger again, more comfortable. But neither Sarah nor Kyle moved toward it immediately. They stood together in the clearing, both shaken by what they'd faced, both awed by what they'd chosen. You really chose me, Kale said, his voice full of wonder. Over your family, over a normal life. You really chose me, Sarah countered. Over your kingdom, over being human again. They looked at each other, and something passed between them. Something deeper than words, deeper than conscious thought. A recognition of connection that went beyond need or selfishness or survival, something that might have been the beginning of love. We're either doing something incredibly brave, Kale said softly, or incredibly stupid. I told you before, Sarah replied with a small smile. We're both. He laughed, that rough, almost human sound that she'd come to treasure. Come on, let's rest before the forest decides to test us again. They settled into the shelter, both exhausted from the emotional ordeal. But as Sarah drifted toward sleep, nestled against Kale's side, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, dangerous, beautiful hope. And for once, she wasn't afraid of it. Chapter 8. The Price of Breaking Curses. Sarah woke to silence. Not the peaceful silence of sleep, but the oppressive silence of something waiting, watching. The forest had gone completely still, no wind, no whispers, no sound at all, except her own breathing and Kale's heartbeat beside her. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake him. In sleep, his face was peaceful, almost gentle. The changes from the last trial were more pronounced. now his features slightly more human, though still distinctly beast-like. He was caught between forms, suspended in transformation. He dreams of being human again, the forest's voice said, making Sarah jump. He dreams of touching you with human hands, of speaking with a human voice, of being worthy of the choice you made. He's already worthy, Sarah whispered. Is he? The pool at the clearing center began to glow with crimson light, the color of blood, of sacrifice. The fourth trial will answer that question, and it will answer whether you are worthy of him. The red light spread, engulfing the clearing. When it faded, Sarah found herself standing alone at the pool's edge. Cale was gone, or no, not gone. She could see him in the water's reflection, still sleeping in the shelter. Separate from her. The trial of sacrifice, the forest announced. You have chosen each other, but choice is easy when it costs nothing. True loyalty is proven only when the price becomes unbearable. From the pool rose a figure, Morgana, the witch who'd cursed Cale. She looked exactly as she had in Sarah's dream, beautiful and terrible, with eyes of molten gold and power radiating from her like heat from a forge. Little lost girl, Morgana said, her voice like breaking ice. You've done well to come this far. 3 trials passed, 3 seals broken. But now we reach the heart of it. The truth I've been waiting 7 years for someone to understand. What truth? Sarah asked, forcing her voice steady. That curses cannot be broken without cost. Morgana circled her slowly, assessing. Magic requires balance. I took Cale's humanity and beauty as punishment for his cruelty. To restore them, something of equal value must be given in return. Sarah's stomach dropped. What kind of something? That depends, Morgana said, stopping directly in front of her. Tell me, Sarah Ashwood, what is Cale's humanity worth to you? What would you sacrifice to see him free? Anything, Sarah said without hesitation. Anything. Morgana's smile was sharp as broken glass. Such easy words. But let's test them, shall we? She waved her hand, and the pool's surface rippled. Images formed Sarah as she could be, healthy, clean, dressed in fine clothes, standing in a grand house that belonged to her, not as a servant but as mistress, respected, valued, free. I could give you this, Morgana said. A life of comfort and respect. No more servitude, no more invisibility. You would be seen, Sarah. Truly seen, important, valuable. She paused. All you have to do is leave. Walk away from Cale's curse. Let him remain a beast while you claim the life you deserve. No, Sarah said immediately. You haven't heard the alternative. Morgana's eyes glittered dangerously. If you choose to stay, to help break his curse, you will never have that life. You will spend your days in struggle, in hardship, even if the curse breaks. Even if Cale becomes human again, you will always be the peasant girl who consorted with monsters. Society will shun you. You'll be an outcast forever. I don't care about society, Sarah said. Don't you? Morgana tilted her head. You spent 17 years craving acceptance, wanting to be seen and valued. And now you'll throw that away for a man you've known for 3 days? He's not just a man. He's someone who sees me, who chose me, who's trying to be better than he was. Sarah lifted her chin. And 3 days of being truly seen is worth more than 17 years of being invisible to people who should have loved me. Morgana studied her for a long moment. Very well. That was the easy test. Now for the real one. The images in the pool shifted. Now Sarah saw Cale fully human, beautiful, restored to his princehood. But he was surrounded by people. Advisors, courtiers, a woman in a wedding gown standing beside him, her face blurred but clearly noble, clearly appropriate for a prince. When the curse breaks, Morgana said, Cale will be a prince again. He'll have responsibilities, a kingdom to rule, a dynasty to continue. He'll need to marry someone of equal station, someone who can help him rule. Sarah's chest tightened, but she said nothing. You're a peasant, Morgana continued mercilessly. You have no title, no wealth, no political value. Cale may care for you now, while he's a beast, and you're all he has. But when he's human again, when his kingdom needs him, When duty calls? She smiled coldly. Love is a luxury princes can't afford. He'll choose his kingdom over you. He'll have to. Then I'll be happy he has his kingdom back, Sarah said, though the words hurt like broken glass in her throat. I didn't come here to trap him. I came here to save him. If saving him means losing him afterward, then that's the price. Such noble words, Morgana said. But can you truly accept them? Can you really give everything to save someone, knowing you'll get nothing in return? Yes, Sarah said, and meant it. Because that's what love is. It's not about what you get back. It's about wanting someone to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include you. The pool flared bright crimson, and Morgana's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her beautiful, terrible face. You speak of love. After 3 days, after admitting you came to him partly for selfish reasons. You claim to love him? Sarah paused, the question hitting her like a physical blow. Did she love Cale? Could you love someone you'd known for such a short time? Or was this just desperation, loneliness, two broken people clinging to each other? But then she thought about his laugh, his gentleness despite his monstrous form, the way he'd protected her from hunters, the vulnerability he'd shown when admitting his fears, the choice he'd made to stay a beast rather than become that hollow prince again. Yes, Sarah said softly. I love him. Not because he's perfect. Not because he can give me anything. But because he's trying. Because he's brave enough to face his sins. Because when he looks at me, I feel real for the first time in my life. And you would sacrifice your own happiness for his? Morgana pressed. If that's what it takes to break the curse, yes. What if the sacrifice required is greater than happiness? Morgana's voice grew serious, the mocking edge falling away. What if it costs you everything, Sarah Ashwood? What if breaking this curse requires your life? The question hung in the air like a blade. Sarah's breath caught. Her life. The forest was asking if she'd die to save Cale. Die to break a curse on a man she'd known for 3 days. It should have been an easy no. Self-preservation should have kicked in, should have made her step back, reconsider, choose herself. But she thought about going back to Greystone Village, returning to invisibility and servitude, living a long life of being unseen, unwanted, slowly disappearing until even she couldn't remember who she'd been. Or she thought about dying here, now, for something real, for someone who'd seen her, for a man who was trying to become better than he'd been. One was survival, the other was living. If my death breaks the curse, Sarah said slowly, if that's truly what's required, then yes, I give my life freely. Better to die mattering to someone than to live 100 years mattering to no one. The crimson light exploded outward, so bright Sarah had to shield her eyes. When it faded, Morgana was staring at her with an expression. Sarah couldn't read something between respect and sorrow. Do you understand what you've just done? Morgana asked quietly. Pass the trial? Sarah ventured. More than that. Morgana gestured, and the pool showed Sarah's reflection, but it was glowing with the same crimson light, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. You've bound yourself to the curse, tied your life force to its breaking. When the final trial comes, when the curse either breaks or solidifies forever, your fate will be tied to Cale's. Horror dawned. You mean, I mean that if he fails, you die. If the curse becomes permanent, the binding will consume you. You've literally bet your life on his redemption. Morgana's smile was sad now. That is the sacrifice required, Sarah Ashwood. Not your comfort or your happiness, but your very existence. Everything you are, wagered on the belief that he's worth saving. Can I take it back? Sarah whispered. No, the binding is complete. You spoke the words, made the vow. The magic has accepted your sacrifice. Morgana stepped closer. There are 2 trials left. If Cale passes them both, the curse breaks. He becomes human. You live. But if he fails even one... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Does he know? Sarah asked. Does Cale know what I've done? Not yet, but he will. Morgana looked toward where Cale still slept in the shelter. And when he discovers you've bet your life on him, it will become the greatest test of all. Can he live with that pressure? Can he be worthy of such a sacrifice? Or will the weight of it crush him? The red light faded from the pool, returning to its normal silver. A fourth pillar began to glow, this one with crimson light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Like Sarah's heartbeat. The trial of sacrifice is complete, the forest announced. The binding is made. 2 trials remain. 2 chances for the prince to prove himself worthy of the life wagered for him. Morgana turned to leave, dissolving back into mist and magic. But she paused, looking back at Sarah one last time. For what it's worth, the witch said softly. I hope he succeeds. I cursed him to teach him to see people as real, to value them as human. In 7 years, no one was willing to risk anything for him. They pitied him, feared him, but never valued him enough to sacrifice for him. Her golden eyes met Sarah's. Until you, a peasant girl with nothing, who gave everything. Then she was gone, and Sarah stood alone by the pool, trembling with the weight of what she'd done. Behind her, she heard movement. Cale was waking. Sarah? His voice was rough with sleep. What happened? I felt something. The curse shifted again. Sarah turned to face him, and she knew she should tell him. Should explain that her life was now tied to his success, that if he failed the remaining trials, she would die. But looking at his face more human now, more vulnerable, she couldn't add that burden to everything else he carried. The 4th trial, she said. Which was true. I passed it. Cale looked at the 4th glowing pillar, then at Sarah, his golden eyes searching. What did it cost? These trials always cost something. Nothing I wasn't willing to pay. Sarah said, which was also true. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his clawed fingers. They were changing too, becoming more hand-like, more capable of gentleness. Sarah, what did the forest make you sacrifice? She looked up at him, this beast who was becoming a man, who'd chosen her over a kingdom, who was trying so hard to be better than he'd been, and she lied, because some truths were too heavy to share. My fear, she said. The trial made me sacrifice my fear of being left behind. Made me accept that when you're human again, you might not need me anymore. And I chose to help you anyway. It wasn't entirely a lie. She had accepted that. But it wasn't the whole truth either. Cale's expression softened. Sarah, even when the curse breaks, even when I'm human again, I'll still— Don't, she interrupted gently. Don't make promises about the future. Let's just focus on breaking the curse first. The rest. We'll figure out the rest later. If there was a later. If she survived. If he passed the remaining trials. Cale looked like he wanted to argue. But something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he pulled her into an embrace, his arms still powerful, still beast-like but gentler now, wrapping around her with careful strength. 2 more trials, he murmured against her hair. 2 more, and this is over. 2 more trials, Sarah thought, and either she lived or died. Either Cale earned his redemption, or her sacrifice would be for nothing. She held him tighter, memorizing the feel of him, fur and muscle and warmth, and that heartbeat that sounded like home. 2 more trials, she echoed. We can do this. She just hoped she was right. Because if she wasn't, if Cale failed, then she'd bet everything on the wrong man, and the price of that mistake would be her life. If Sarah's sacrifice reminds you that true love isn't about what you receive, but what you're willing to give, subscribe to continue this journey, because what comes next will test them in ways that will either forge an unbreakable bond, or destroy them both. Chapter 9. The villain's plan exposed. The forest gave them no time to rest. The moment Sarah and Cale stepped out of the shelter, the clearing transformed. The pool at its center began to boil, steam rising in thick columns that twisted and writhed like living things. The 4 glowing pillars pulsed in unison, gold, silver, emerald, and crimson, their light building to a crescendo that made the air itself vibrate. The 5th trial begins, the forest announced, its voice deeper now, more resonant. You have proven truth, vulnerability, loyalty, and sacrifice. But one question remains unanswered. Do you understand what you're truly fighting against? The curse, Cale said. We're fighting the curse. Are you? The steam from the pool coalesced into a form Morgana again, but different, younger, desperate, pleading before a throne, where the illusory Prince Kyle sat, cold and dismissive. "This is where it began," the forest said. "But do you know why it began? Do you understand the true purpose of this curse?" The scene played out before them like a theater performance. Young Morgana, begging for help for her village. Prince Kale, mocking her appearance, her poverty, her audacity to think he'd care about peasants, his guards dragging her away while he laughed. But the scene didn't end there. It continued. Morgana, alone in the woods, weeping. Not from hurt pride, but from genuine desperation. "They're dying," she sobbed to the empty forest. "My people are dying, and he doesn't care. He doesn't even see them as human." Then, rising from the darkness, came a different voice, older, deeper. Not the forest's voice, but something else. "I can help you," the voice said. "I can teach him to see, to value human life, to become the prince he should have been." "Who are you?" Morgana asked the darkness. "I am the Blackthorn. I am the old magic of this forest, and I am tired of watching princes destroy lives for glory." The darkness coalesced into a vague, shifting form. "I will give you the power to curse him, to teach him, to break him down and rebuild him into something better." "But at what cost?" Morgana asked warily. "The cost," the voice said, "is that the curse cannot be broken by him alone. It requires another, someone pure of heart, willing to sacrifice everything, to see worth in him even when he cannot see it in himself. Someone who will love him, not despite his monstrous form, but because of the humanity he discovers while wearing it." Morgana hesitated. What if no such person exists? What if he's too broken to inspire such love? Then he remains a beast forever, and that is justice. The darkness pulsed. But if such a person exists, if someone can see past his sins to the man he's trying to become, then he earns his redemption. And that person, that sacrifice, becomes the key to breaking not just his curse, but something far greater. "What do you mean?" Morgana asked. "This curse is a test," the voice explained. "Not just for the prince, but for humanity itself. For 7 years, people have come to these woods, nobles who claimed to love him, who wanted to break the curse. But all of them failed because their love was conditional. They loved the idea of saving a prince. They loved the story. They loved what he could give them. None of them loved him." The scene shifted, showing dozens of people over the years. Beautiful women, ambitious men, all attempting the trials and failing. Some ran when faced with their own truths. Others chose comfort over loyalty. None made it past the 3rd trial. "Until her," the darkness said, and the scene showed Sarah walking into the forest, hollow-eyed but determined. A girl with nothing, no beauty by conventional standards, no power, no status. But someone who understands what it means to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be seen as less than human. Sarah watched herself meet Kale for the first time, saw the moment she'd offered to help with his wound, the moment she'd chosen to follow him deeper into the forest, the moment she'd taken his hand and said together, "She sees him," the darkness observed, "truly sees him. Not the prince he was, not the beast he appears to be, but the man he's becoming. And that is the magic that can break any curse." The scene dissolved, returning to the present. Morgana's form solidified, looking directly at Sarah and Kale. "Do you understand now?" Morgana asked. This was never just about punishing Kale. It was about finding anyone who could prove that true love still exists, that humans are capable of seeing past surfaces to the soul beneath, that sacrifice and loyalty and genuine connection haven't been lost to selfishness and cruelty. Sarah felt like she'd been struck. "You mean, this whole time, I was being tested too?" "Not just tested," Morgana corrected. "Proven. You've done what no one else could in 7 years. You've shown that authentic love, messy, selfish in its own way, but real still exists in this world." Kale was staring at Sarah with an expression of dawning horror. "You bound yourself to the curse. In the last trial, that's what you sacrificed, isn't it? Not just your fear, your life." Sarah's silence was answer enough. "She didn't tell you," Morgana confirmed, "because she knew the weight would crush you. But yes, Prince Kale, This girl, this peasant with nothing, who society deems worthless, has wagered her very existence on your redemption. If you fail the final trial, she dies. The binding will consume her. Cale stumbled backward, his face more human now, more capable of expression twisted with anguish. No, Sarah, you can't. I'm not worth that. I'm not worth your life. That's not your choice to make, Sarah said quietly. It's mine, and I made it. But if I fail, then you won't fail. Sarah interrupted. Cale, listen to me. This is the trial. Right now. This moment. She crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. Morgana said the curse was about teaching you to value human life, to see people as real. And you've learned that. You have. But the final lesson, the one you need to truly understand, is that you're human too. You're real, you're valuable, you're worth saving. How can you say that? Cale's voice broke. After everything I've done? After knowing what I was? Because I've also seen what you've become, Sarah said fiercely. The prince in those visions? He would never have talked to me, would never have protected me, would never have chosen to stay a beast rather than become that hollow man again. You did those things, the real you, the you that the curse revealed. The trial of understanding, the forest announced. Prince Cale, you have faced your sins. You have shown vulnerability. You have chosen loyalty over comfort. But do you understand the final truth? Do you comprehend why you were cursed? Cale looked at Morgana. To teach me to see people as human, to value them, to care about their suffering instead of my own glory. Yes, Morgana said. But there's more. Look at Sarah. Really look at her. What do you see? Cale turned to Sarah, his golden eyes so much more human now, searching her face. I see someone brave, someone who walked into darkness rather than accept a life of invisibility, someone who's stronger than she knows, someone who, his voice caught, someone who sees me, who made me feel human again when I was certain I'd forgotten how. And? Morgana pressed. What else? Cale's eyes widened with sudden understanding. She's me. Or, I was her. Before the curse. He looked at Morgana. I was Sarah. 17 years of being dismissed. Being treated as less than human. Being invisible to the people who should have cared. That's what I did to everyone around me. I made them invisible. Made them feel worthless. Now you understand. Morgana said softly. The curse wasn't just punishment. It was a mirror. It made you experience what you'd inflicted on countless others, and the only person who could break it was someone who'd experienced that same pain. Someone who could recognize herself in you and choose compassion instead of vengeance. Tears streamed down Cale's face, real tears, human tears. I'm so sorry, he whispered, though Sarah didn't know if he was apologizing to her, to Morgana, or to every person he'd ever hurt. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, Morgana said, but her voice wasn't cruel. Sorry never is, but growth real, genuine change that matters. You've spent 7 years becoming someone capable of remorse, someone who sees his victims as human. She looked at Sarah, and you found someone who sees you as human, even when you couldn't see it yourself. The pool flared brilliant white, so bright it hurt to look at. When the light faded, a fifth pillar was glowing, this one with pure white light that seemed to contain all other colors within it. The trial of understanding is complete, the forest declared. 5 trials passed, 5 seals broken, 1 trial remains. What is it? Sarah asked. What's the final trial? The only trial that truly matters, Morgana said. And for the first time, she smiled, not cruelly, but with something that looked almost like hope. The trial of choice. You've both chosen each other repeatedly throughout this journey. But the final choice will determine everything. Can you choose love real, complete, unconditional love, knowing all the flaws, all the sins, all the mess that comes with it? She began to fade, her form dissolving back into mist. One warning. The final trial will offer you an escape. A way to break the curse without risk, without sacrifice, without pain. It will be tempting, logical, safe. Her eyes, those golden eyes so like Cale's, fixed on them both. And if you choose it, the curse breaks. But you'll lose each other forever. True love requires risk, requires vulnerability, requires choosing the dangerous path because anything less isn't really love at all. Wait, Cale called out. The binding. Sarah's life. If you fail the final trial, the curse becomes permanent, and the binding consumes her. Morgana confirmed without mercy. But if you succeed, if you truly, genuinely choose each other, despite every logical reason not to, then both curse and binding break. She lives. You become human, and you'll have earned something precious, a love that can survive anything. She was almost completely faded now, just a shimmer in the air. I'll be watching. I've waited 7 years for someone to teach this prince what I couldn't. Don't waste my time. Don't waste her sacrifice. A pause. And Cale? Make me proud. Become the prince I knew you could be, the one who was buried under all that cruelty and pride. Then she was gone, and Sarah and Cale stood alone in the clearing with 5 glowing pillars and one final trial ahead. Cale turned to Sarah, his face a mask of anguish and determination. I won't let you die. Whatever this final trial demands, whatever I have to do. We do it together, Sarah corrected. That's been the point all along, Cale. Not you saving me or me saving you. Both of us saving each other. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in existence. Which, Sarah supposed, to him, she was. Just as he was to her. I love you, Cale said, the words tumbling out rough and desperate. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you bandaged my wound without fear. Maybe when you faced the hunters with me. Maybe when you chose me over your family. But I love you, Sarah Ashwood. You're the most real thing I've ever known. Sarah's heart felt too large for her chest. I love you too. You beautiful, broken, impossible man. I love you so much it terrifies me. They stood there, holding each other, while around them, the forest prepared for the final trial. The trial that would either save them both or destroy them. The trial that would prove, once and for all, whether love real, messy, dangerous love was worth the risk. Ready? Cale asked. No, Sarah admitted. But let's do it anyway. Together, they walked toward the center of the clearing, toward the pool that held their fate, toward the final trial, toward whatever ending triumphant or tragic awaited them there. Chapter 10. Love's Ultimate Gamble. The pool's surface turned to glass perfect, mirror bright, reflecting not the sky above but something deeper, something infinite. The final trial. The forest's voice boomed, resonating through Sarah's bones. The trial of choice. The moment that will determine not just your fates, but prove whether humanity is capable of the love it claims to value. The glass surface rippled, and from its depths rose 2 pedestals, each holding a crystal sphere that pulsed with inner light. One sphere glowed warm gold, the other cool silver. Before you lie 2 paths, the forest explained. 2 ways to break the curse, 2 choices, one safe, one dangerous. Choose wisely, for there is no returning from this decision. Cale and Sarah approached the pedestals slowly. As they drew near, images formed within the spheres, visions of different futures. The first path, the forest said, gesturing to the golden sphere, is the path of logic, the safe choice, the reasonable choice. The golden sphere expanded, showing them a vision. Cale, fully human, standing in a throne room restored to glory. He was older, wiser, ruling his kingdom with justice and compassion. His people loved him. His reforms had brought prosperity. He'd become everything a good king should be. But he was alone. This path breaks the curse through acceptance, the forest explained. Cale accepts his past, accepts his growth, accepts that he's learned his lessons. The curse breaks. He becomes human. Sarah's binding dissolves, she lives. A pause. But you will have no memory of each other. The forest will erase every moment you've shared, every trial you've passed, every truth you've spoken. You'll return to your separate lives as strangers. Cale becomes the king he was meant to be. Sarah returns to the village and finds a new path, free from her stepfamily's cruelty. No memory? Sarah whispered. We'd forget everything? Everything, the forest confirmed. But you'd both be safe. both alive. Both free to live full lives without the weight of this connection. It's logical. Clean. Fair. Sarah stared at the vision. She saw herself too older, smiling, running a small bakery in a different town. She looked happy, content. She'd found peace, but she was alone too. The second path, the forest said, and its voice dropped to something almost ominous, is the path of love. The dangerous choice. The foolish choice. The silver sphere expanded, and its vision was far less clear. Sarah saw herself and Cale together, but the images were fractured, uncertain. She saw moments of joy and moments of struggle, saw them fighting, making up, growing together, saw hardship and beauty intertwined so thoroughly she couldn't separate them. This path breaks the curse through bonding, the forest said. You accept each other completely, flaws, sins, selfishness, everything. You bind your lives together permanently, not just metaphorically, but magically. Your fates become one. Where one goes, the other follows. What hurts one, hurts both. You will never be separate again. And, if we choose this path? Cale asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be simple. Then you face the unknown together. The curse breaks. Cale becomes human. Sarah's death binding transforms into a life binding. But, the forest paused significantly, the world will not make it easy. Society will condemn a prince who loves a peasant. Duty will demand sacrifices. You will face trials far worse than any I've shown you here, and you'll face them together, unable to escape, unable to choose separation, even when staying together becomes agonizing. The silver sphere showed flashes of hardship. Cale's nobles rejecting Sarah, villagers spitting at her. The constant pressure of being unequal in station. It showed arguments and tears and moments when love felt like a burden instead of a blessing. But it also showed them holding hands through it all. Choosing each other, again and again, even when it hurt. This is the choice, the forest said. Safety and separation, or danger and unity. Logic or love. Choose now. And choose together. For if you cannot agree, the curse remains, and Sarah dies at sunset. Sarah looked at the golden sphere, the safe path, the logical path. She'd live. Cale would live. They'd both find happiness eventually, even if they couldn't remember each other. It was the smart choice, the reasonable choice, the choice anyone with sense would make. Then she looked at Cale and saw the same war playing out on his face. The logical choice is golden, Cale said slowly. You'd be safe. You'd be free. You wouldn't remember binding yourself to my curse. You could have a real life, Sarah. Not a life of scandal and struggle as a prince's impossible bride, but actual peace. You'd be a good king, Sarah replied. The king you were meant to be. You could help people, make real changes, atone for your sins through action instead of suffering. They stood on opposite sides of the pedestals, each sphere pulsing between them. I want you to choose the golden path, Cale said, and his voice cracked. I want you to live, Sarah. Even if it means forgetting me. Even if it means I rule alone forever. Your life matters more than my happiness. And I want you to choose it too, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Because you deserve to be a great king. You've earned your redemption. You shouldn't have to carry the burden of me, a peasant girl who'll only make your rule harder. They were both crying now, both offering the other the logical path, both trying to sacrifice their own happiness for the other's safety. And suddenly, Sarah understood. This was the trial. This is the test, she said aloud. Not whether we choose logic or love, but whether we're brave enough to choose together, even when apart seems safer. Cale's eyes widened with the same realization. The curse was about teaching me to value others. But the final lesson is learning to value us, to believe that what we have is worth fighting for, even when the world says it isn't. So what do we do? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer in her heart. Cale walked around the pedestals to stand beside her. He took her hand, his clawed fingers still monstrous but so gentle, and looked into her eyes. We choose the dangerous path, he said. We choose each other. We choose love, even though it's going to be hard. Even though society will condemn us. Even though logic says we're fools, we choose to be fools together. Sarah agreed, lacing her fingers through his. Because I don't want a safe life without you. I don't want to forget what we've been through. I don't want logic or peace if it means losing this. Are you certain? The forest asked, and for the first time, there was something like warmth in its ancient voice. This is not a fairy tale ending, you understand. Choosing each other doesn't solve all your problems. It creates new ones, harder ones. We're certain, they said together. Then make your choice manifest, the forest commanded. Both of you, place your hands on the silver sphere. Speak the binding words. Commit yourselves to this dangerous path. Sarah and Kale approached the silver sphere together. Its surface was cool beneath their joined hands, pulsing with potential. Kale Thornwood. Kale began, his voice strong despite the tears on his face. Choose this woman. Sarah Ashwood. I choose her in full knowledge of the hardships ahead. I choose her messy reality over comfortable fantasy. I choose the struggle of loving her over the ease of forgetting her. Sarah Ashwood, Sarah continued, her voice equally firm. Choose this man, Kale Thornwood. I choose him, knowing his sins and his growth. I choose the challenge of loving a prince over the safety of a quiet life. I choose to bind my fate to his. For better or worse, in joy and in hardship. Together, they said, we choose love. We choose each other. We choose the dangerous path. The silver sphere exploded with light. The clearing dissolved around them, replaced by pure silver radiance that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Sarah felt the light enter her, felt it weaving through her very soul, connecting to Kale's soul, binding them together so thoroughly that she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. The binding from the fourth trial, the death curse that would have consumed her transformed. Instead of a noose tightening around her life, it became a thread of light connecting her heart to Kale's. She could feel him, feel his love, his fear, his determination, his soul singing in harmony with hers. And Kale, she felt his transformation beginning. The curse breaking, unraveling, his body reshaping. But not back to the hollow prince he'd been. Into something new, someone who'd been broken and rebuilt into something stronger. The light grew impossibly bright, and then, silence, darkness, and then, slowly, awareness returning. Sarah opened her eyes to find herself lying on soft moss in the clearing. The pool had returned to calm silver. All 7 pillars glowed with brilliant light gold, silver, emerald, crimson, white, and 2 more she hadn't seen before, 1 sapphire blue, 1 rose gold. And beside her, lying on the moss, was a man, not a beast, not a monster, a man. He had dark hair that fell across his forehead, strong features marked by suffering and growth, and when his eyes opened, they were still golden, those same golden eyes, but in a human face. Kale? Sarah whispered. He sat up slowly, looking at his hands, human hands, with human fingers, no claws. He touched his face, feeling smooth skin instead of fur, a human nose instead of a muzzle. It worked, he said, and his voice was different, deeper, richer, fully human. The curse, it's broken. He looked at Sarah, and wonder filled his face. I'm human again. Sarah launched herself at him, and he caught her, pulling her into his arms. They were different arms, human arms, but they held her with the same gentleness, the same love. We did it, Sarah sobbed into his shoulder. We actually did it. You did it, Kale corrected, pulling back to look at her. You walked into a cursed forest with nothing. You faced trials that broke others. You bound your life to mine. You chose the dangerous path when safety was offered. Sarah, you saved me in every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, Sarah insisted. That's what the trials proved. That real love isn't about one person saving the other. It's about choosing to face the world together. Movement at the edge of the clearing drew their attention. Morgana emerged from the trees, looking exactly as she had in the visions, beautiful and powerful, but softer now, less terrible. You did it, she said, and there was genuine joy in her voice. In 7 years, you're the first, the only ones brave enough, foolish enough, genuine enough to choose the dangerous path. She approached them, and Sarah saw tears in her golden eyes. You've proven what I hoped to prove, that real love still exists, that humans are capable of choosing each other over comfort, that growth and redemption are possible. The curse is truly broken? Cale asked. Completely, Morgana smiled. You're human again, Prince Cale, free to return to your kingdom, to your throne, to your life. But, she looked between them, you chose the binding path. You're connected now, permanently. Where one goes, the other must follow. Your fates are intertwined. Are you prepared for what that means? We are, Sarah and Cale said together, and felt the truth of it through their bond. She could sense his certainty, his love, his commitment, and he could sense hers. Then go, Morgana said. Return to the world. Face its judgments and challenges. Prove that the love you forged in this cursed forest can survive in the harsh light of reality. She paused. And Cale, be the king I always knew you could be, the one who sees his people as human, who values a peasant girl's courage as much as a noble's title, who leads with the wisdom that only suffering can teach. I will, Cale promised. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of this gift. Worthy of her. Morgana nodded, satisfied. Then she turned to Sarah. And you, brave girl. You walked into darkness and found light. You wagered everything on a monster's redemption and won. Don't let anyone, not nobles, not society, not even your own doubts convince you that you're not worthy of the crown you've earned. Crown? Sarah asked, confused. Morgana smiled mysteriously. You'll understand soon enough. She began to fade. The Blackthorn Forest releases you. Go with my blessing, and thank you both of you for proving that hope wasn't wasted on humanity after all. She dissolved into light, and the forest began to change around them. The ancient trees pulled back, creating a path. In the distance, Sarah could see daylight, real daylight, not the strange, timeless light of the heart of the forest. A way out, a way home. Cale stood, then offered his hand to Sarah. She took it, feeling the rightness of it, his human hand in hers, their souls bound together, their future uncertain but theirs to face together. Ready to face the world? Cale asked. Sarah looked at the path leading out of the Blackthorn. Beyond it lay everything they'd been warned about: scandal, judgment, struggle. A prince and a peasant, bound together by choice instead of convention. The world wouldn't understand, wouldn't approve, would make their lives difficult in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But she looked at Cale, really looked at him, saw the man he'd become through suffering and growth, saw the love in his golden eyes, felt their bond humming between them like music. With you? Sarah said. I'm ready for anything. Hand in hand, they walked out of the Blackthorn Forest, into the sunlight, into their future, into the beautiful, dangerous, impossible life they'd chosen together. Chapter 11. The crown earned, not given. The world beyond the Blackthorn Forest was almost shocking in its normalcy. Sarah and Cale emerged onto a hillside overlooking the northern territories, and below them spread Cale's kingdom villages and farmlands, the glittering river that fed the valley, and in the distance, the castle where he'd once ruled with cruelty and pride. It looked exactly as Sarah had imagined from stories. Grand, beautiful, untouchable, and terrifying. I haven't seen it in 7 years, Cale said quietly, staring at his former home. I used to think it was the most beautiful place in the world. Now I see it for what it really was, a monument to my own vanity, built on the suffering of people I refused to see. Sarah squeezed his hand. Through their bond, she felt his turmoil, guilt, anxiety, determination, all swirling together. You're not that prince anymore. No, Cale agreed. But I have to face what he did, face the people he hurt. That's going to be difficult. We'll face it together, Sarah reminded him. That's what we chose. They started down the hill, and as they walked, Sarah became acutely aware of her appearance. Her dress was ragged, stained with dirt and moss from the forest. Her hair was tangled. She looked like exactly what she was, a peasant girl who'd been living in the woods. And Cale, despite being transformed back into human form, wore only the tattered remnants of clothing that had barely survived his beast form. They looked like beggars, vagabonds, not like a prince and his. What? Companion? The woman he'd bound himself to? Sarah didn't even know what to call herself. As if sensing her thoughts through their bond, Cale stopped and turned to her. You're afraid. Of what they'll think. Of how they'll judge you, aren't you? Sarah countered. Terrified. Cale admitted. But Sarah, I've been judged and found wanting by everyone who mattered. I've been a monster for 7 years. Whatever they think of me now can't be worse than what I know I deserve. He cupped her face gently. But you've done nothing but be brave and kind and impossible. And they're going to look at you and see only a peasant. They won't see what I see. Then we make them see, Sarah said, with more confidence than she felt. Morgana said I'd earned a crown. I don't know what she meant, but I'm not going to let nobles who've never faced a real trial in their lives make me feel small. Cale's smile was bright and fierce. There she is. There's my dangerous, hope-filled warrior. They continued down the hill, and as they drew closer to the first village, people began to notice them. An old woman drawing water from a well, a farmer herding sheep, children playing in a field. All of them stopped and stared. Is that? One woman whispered. Is that Prince Cale? Can't be, another replied. The prince has been cursed for years. That's just some vagabond. But an old man stepped forward, squinting at Cale. I served in the castle guard before the curse. I know the prince's face. His eyes widened. By the gods, it is him. The prince has returned. Word spread like wildfire. Within minutes, people were pouring out of their homes, gathering around Cale and Sarah. Some looked hopeful, others suspicious, many simply confused. Prince Cale? A middle-aged woman asked tentatively. Is it really you? The curse. Is it broken? It is, Cale said, his voice carrying across the crowd. The curse is broken. I am myself again. Or rather, I'm someone new, someone who spent 7 years learning lessons I should have known all along. Where have you been? Someone called out. What happened to the beast? Who is she? The questions came rapid fire, overwhelming. Sarah felt panic rising. All these people, all these eyes on her, judging her, wondering who this ragged girl was, and why she stood beside their prince. But then she felt Cale's hand tighten around hers, felt his steadiness through their bond, felt his love wrapping around her like armor. This is Sarah Ashwood, Cale announced, his voice firm and proud. She is the reason the curse broke. She walked into the blackthorn forest when no one else dared. She faced trials that broke dozens before her. She wagered her life for mine. She chose me when logic demanded she choose safety. He turned to look at her, and the love in his eyes made Sarah's breath catch. She is the bravest person I have ever known, and I have bound my life to hers, permanently and completely. Where I go, she goes. What I am, she is. There is no Prince Cale without Sarah. Not anymore. The crowd erupted in whispers. Sarah heard fragments. Just a peasant. Inappropriate. The council will never allow. But she also heard other voices. Broke a 7-year curse. Must be special. Looks at her like she hung the moon. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, leaning heavily on a cane. She looked at Sarah with sharp, assessing eyes. You went into the Blackthorn? Willingly? Yes, Sarah said, finding her voice. Why? What did you have to gain? Sarah thought about lying, about making herself sound noble and selfless, but she'd learned in the trials that truth, even uncomfortable truth, was more powerful than pretty lies. I was running away, she admitted, from a family that didn't want me, from a life where I was invisible. I went into the forest thinking I might die, and that felt better than living the way I had been. She looked at Cale. But I found something there I didn't expect. Purpose. Partnership. Someone who saw me as real. And when the trials came, when I had to choose between safety and him, I chose him. Because he chose me first. The old woman studied her for a long moment, then smiled a knowing, approving smile. Honest, I like that. She turned to the crowd. The girl speaks truth. I can feel it in my bones. And if Prince Kale has learned to value truth over pretty words, then perhaps he has changed. Changed how? A man called out. How do we know he won't just return to his old ways? Kale stepped forward, addressing the crowd directly. You don't know. You have no reason to trust me. 7 years ago, I was a tyrant. I raised your taxes to fund pointless wars. I worked your children to death, building monuments to my vanity. I saw you as tools, not people. His voice was raw with emotion. I can't undo those sins, can't bring back the people who died because of my cruelty. But I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance I've been given. I will rule if you'll let me rule with the wisdom that only suffering can teach. I will see you, all of you, as human, as valuable, as mattering. Silence fell over the crowd. Sarah held her breath, wondering if they'd accept him or reject him, wondering if the change he'd gone through meant anything to people who'd suffered under his rule. Then a young woman stepped forward, barely more than a girl, with a baby in her arms. My husband died in your war, Prince Kale. Died for nothing, because you wanted glory. Kale's face crumpled with grief. I know, I'm so sorry. Let me finish, the young woman interrupted. He died, and I hated you, cursed your name every day. When I heard you'd been transformed into a beast, I celebrated, thought it was justice. Sarah felt tears building, feeling Kale's anguish through their bond. But then, the woman continued, I heard the stories. About how you stayed in the forest for 7 years instead of terrorizing villages. About how you never hurt anyone, even though you could have. About how you carved toys and left them at the forest's edge for children to find. She shifted the baby in her arms. My son has one of your carvings, a wooden horse. It's his favorite toy. Kale stared at her, confused. I didn't know anyone found those. I needed to do something good, something to prove I wasn't completely the monster I looked like. They found them, the old woman confirmed. For 7 years, we'd find your gifts at the forest's edge. Toys for children. Tools for farmers. Once, a whole set of furniture for old Marcus when his house burned down. You never took credit, never demanded thanks, just left them and disappeared. I didn't deserve thanks, Kale said. It was the least I could do. The young mother looked at Sarah. You walked into the forest for him. Risked your life for a man you didn't know. Why? Because, Sarah said simply, sometimes the people who look like monsters are just people who've been broken, and sometimes the people who look perfect are the real monsters. I chose to see who he was becoming, not just who he'd been. The young mother nodded slowly. Then, to Sarah's shock, she knelt. Then you have my loyalty, Lady Sarah. Any woman brave enough to walk into darkness and foolish enough to wager her life on redemption is a woman worth following. I'm not a lady, Sarah protested. You're the woman who broke the curse, the mother interrupted. You're the woman our prince chose, and you're the woman who taught him to see us as human. She looked up with fierce eyes. That makes you a lady in every way that matters. One by one, others began to kneel. Not all of them, some remained standing, skeptical, unconvinced. But enough to show that change was possible, that redemption could be earned, that a prince and a peasant could forge something real from the ashes of a curse. The journey to the castle took hours, with the crowd growing as they traveled. By the time they reached the gates, hundreds of people followed, all wanting to witness Prince Kale's return. The castle guards stared in shock as Kale approached. My lord? One stammered. Is it really you? It's me, Kale confirmed. Changed, but me. I've come home. The gates opened, and they entered the courtyard. Sarah's grip on Kale's hand tightened as she took in the grandeur marble columns. Intricate stonework. Wealth beyond anything she'd ever imagined. And emerging from the castle doors came the nobles, the council members who'd ruled in Kale's absence. Men and women in fine clothes, their faces ranging from shocked to horrified to calculating. Prince Kale, an elderly man in elaborate robes, said, stepping forward. He was clearly someone important, a chancellor or high advisor. We heard rumors of your return, but the curse is truly broken? It is, Lord Chancellor. How? We sent dozens of people to attempt the trials over the years. All failed. Cale gestured to Sarah. She succeeded where others failed. The Chancellor's eyes swept over Sarah with barely concealed disdain. And who exactly is she? She is Sarah Ashwood, Cale said, his voice hardening. And she is mine. We are bound magically and permanently. Where I go, she goes. What I am, she is. My lord, a noblewoman said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Surely you don't mean to suggest that this girl would take a position at court? She's clearly a commoner. Quite inappropriate. She broke a 7-year curse, Cale interrupted. She faced trials that destroyed people far more appropriate than her. She wagered her life for mine. Tell me, Lady Morgrave, what have you sacrificed for this kingdom? What trials have you passed? What courage have you shown? Lady Morgrave's mouth opened and closed. Fish-like. I thought not, Cale said. Sarah has earned her place beside me through courage and sacrifice. If that's not appropriate, then perhaps our definition of appropriate needs to change. But my lord, the Chancellor protested, the Council must discuss this. There are traditions to consider. Protocols. The question of succession can be discussed later, Cale interrupted. Right now, I'm exhausted. Sarah is exhausted. We've been through trials you cannot imagine. We will rest, we will clean ourselves, and tomorrow we will discuss the future of this kingdom. But make no mistake, his voice turned to steel. Sarah will be part of those discussions. She will be respected. She will be valued. Or you will find yourselves seeking new positions. The nobles exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how to handle this new, commanding version of their prince. As you wish, my lord, the Chancellor finally said, bowing. I'll have chambers prepared, for both of you. The chambers they were given were more luxurious than anything Sarah had ever imagined. A massive bed with silk sheets, a bathing room with a tub large enough to swim in, wardrobes full of beautiful clothes, windows overlooking the kingdom spread out below. Sarah stood at one of those windows, looking out at the sunset, painting the sky gold and crimson. Behind her, she heard Cale enter after speaking with the servants. They're scandalized, he said, coming to stand beside her. The nobles. Half of them think I've lost my mind. The other half are already plotting how to use you against me. Having second thoughts? Sarah asked, only half joking. Never. Cale wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Sarah, I spent 7 years in that forest learning to be human, but you taught me what being human actually means. It's not about power or status or what society deems appropriate. It's about connection, about choosing someone and being chosen, about seeing each other as real. Sarah turned in his arms to face him. In the sunset light, he looked almost ethereal human but marked by his experiences, beautiful but in a way that spoke of suffering survived rather than privilege granted. What happens now? She asked. The nobles won't accept me easily. And there's still my step-family. Aldrich led those hunters. He wanted me dead. Then we'll deal with Aldrich, Cale said firmly. We'll deal with all of it, together. That's what we chose, remember? The dangerous path, the struggle, the challenges that come with choosing each other. I'm scared, Sarah admitted. So am I, Cale said. But I'm also more certain than I've ever been about anything. Sarah, I love you. Not because you saved me, though you did. Not because you broke my curse, though you did that too. I love you because you're brave and honest, and you see the world clearly. Because you walked into darkness rather than accept invisibility. Because you make me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. He pulled back slightly, reaching into the pocket of the new clothes the servants had brought. When his hand emerged, he held a ring, simple silver, with a stone the color of moonlight. I had this made years ago, he said, when I was still a beast. I carved it from silver, I mined myself, polished the stone with my own claws. I told myself I was just practicing my craftsmanship, but I think, even then, I was hoping that someone would come. Someone who could see past the curse to the man beneath. He knelt before her, and Sarah's breath caught. Sarah Ashwood, we're already bound magically. Our fates are intertwined. But I want more than that. I want to marry you. I want you to be my princess, and eventually my queen. Not because protocol demands it, but because I cannot imagine ruling, cannot imagine living without you beside me." His golden eyes shone with tears. "Will you marry me? Will you face this dangerous, difficult, impossible future as my wife?" Sarah looked down at him, this prince who'd been a beast, who'd learned humanity through suffering, who'd chosen her over safety. This man who saw her, who valued her, who loved her not, despite her ordinariness, but because of everything that made her real. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you. I'll face everything with you. The nobles, the scandal, the struggle, all of it. Because you're right, we already chose the dangerous path. We might as well walk it together officially." Kale slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if made for her, which she supposed it had been. Made by a beast who'd hoped for salvation. Made for a girl who'd walked into darkness seeking light. He stood and pulled her into a kiss that tasted of tears and hope, and promises neither of them could guarantee, but both of them meant with everything they were. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Sarah laughed. "We're insane, you know. This is going to be so hard." "The best things usually are," Kale replied, grinning. "Besides, we passed 7 trials in a cursed forest. How much harder can court politics be?" "You'd be surprised," Sarah said. "At least the forest was honest about trying to kill us." The wedding took place 3 months later, and it was unlike any royal wedding in history. The nobles wanted a grand affair in the castle with only the elite invited. Kale and Sarah insisted on a ceremony in the village square, open to everyone, nobles and peasants alike. They wanted the people who'd suffered under Kale's old rule to witness his new beginning. Sarah wore a gown of simple white silk, beautiful but not ostentatious. In her hair, she wore wildflowers from the blackthorn forest, a reminder of where their story truly began. And around her neck hung a pendant Morgana had left for her, a crystal that glowed with 7 colors, representing each trial past. Kale wore the formal attire of a prince, but he'd modified it, removed the excessive gold, the symbols of power and dominance. He wanted to look like a leader, not a tyrant. As Sarah walked toward him through the crowd, no father to give her away, no family to support her, just herself. And her courage, she saw the faces of the people watching. Some still skeptical, some openly disapproving. But many, especially the common folk, smiled with genuine warmth. The young mother whose husband had died was there, her baby now a toddler, clutching the wooden horse Kale had carved. The old woman who'd first spoken in Sarah's defense stood near the front, beaming with pride. And scattered throughout the crowd were people whose lives had been touched by Kale's anonymous gifts during his years as a beast. The ceremony was performed by a priestess of the old faith, the same faith that had empowered Morgana's curse. She spoke of redemption and second chances, of love that transforms, of courage that breaks curses. "Do you, Prince Kale Thornwood, take this woman to be your wife, your partner, your equal? Do you promise to see her, to value her, to choose her every day for the rest of your life?" "I do," Kale said, his voice carrying across the square. "I choose her, today and every day, for as long as I live." "And do you, Sarah Ashwood, take this man to be your husband, your partner, your equal? Do you promise to stand beside him, to face the future with him, to choose him even when the world says you shouldn't?" "I do," Sarah said, her voice strong and clear. "I choose him. The man he's become, the man he's still becoming, for as long as I live. Then by the old magic and the new law, I declare you bound," the priestess said, "not just by vows, but by choice, not just by ceremony, but by love. What magic has joined, let no one separate." As Kale kissed his bride, the crowd erupted, some in cheers, some in polite applause, some in silence. But it didn't matter, because Sarah and Kale had already proven they could face anything together. They'd faced curses and trials, and the very depths of their own souls. A few disapproving nobles were nothing by comparison. 5 years later, Princess Sarah stood at the window of the royal study, watching the sun set over the kingdom. So much had changed in 5 years. The reforms Kyle had implemented, fair taxation, support for struggling villages, Programs to help widows and orphans had transformed the Northern Territories. The kingdom wasn't perfect, but it was better, kinder, more just. And Sarah had been part of that transformation. She'd fought for programs to help servants and common folk. She'd established schools where peasant children could learn alongside noble children. She'd made herself visible in ways that made some nobles uncomfortable, but made the common people feel seen. She'd also faced the situation with her stepfamily. Aldrich had been arrested for leading the hunters, for plotting against the crown. He'd been exiled. Her mother and Alara had fled to a distant province, wanting nothing to do with Sarah's new status. Sarah had felt nothing. No triumph. No sorrow. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd moved on. She'd built a life that didn't depend on their acceptance or rejection. "There you are," Cale said, entering the study. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. In 5 years, his human form had become comfortable, natural, but his eyes remained golden, a permanent reminder of the curse that had changed him. "Just thinking," Sarah said, leaning back against him. About how far we've come. About that girl who walked into a cursed forest with nothing but a kitchen knife and desperation." She smiled. She'd be shocked to see this. Would she? Cale asked. "I think she'd recognize it. This life we've built, it's messy and difficult and filled with people who still think you're inappropriate for a prince. But it's also real, honest." Exactly what she was looking for when she stepped across the Blackthorn's boundary. Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing the dangerous path? We could have taken the golden sphere. You'd be a beloved king. I'd be peacefully running a bakery somewhere. We'd both be happy. But we wouldn't be us," Cale said. "We wouldn't have this. The struggles, yes, but also the joy. The connection. The certainty that comes from choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, you'd be terrible at running a bakery. You'd give all the bread away to people who looked hungry and end up broke in a week." Sarah laughed. "Probably true." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Your Majesties," a servant called. "The council meeting is about to begin." "We'll be right there," Cale called back. He looked at Sarah. "Ready to face another room of nobles who think we're doing everything wrong?" "With you?" Sarah said, taking his hand the same way she had in the Blackthorn Forest 5 years ago. "Always." They walked out of the study together. King and queen, prince and peasant. 2 broken people who'd chosen to be whole together. The path ahead would have more challenges, more struggles, more moments when choosing each other felt impossible. But they'd faced 7 trials in a cursed forest. They'd chosen love over logic. They'd wagered everything and won. Whatever came next, they would face it the way they'd faced everything else. Together. Epilogue. Deep in the Blackthorn Forest, in a clearing where 7 pillars still glowed with trial light, Morgana stood watching through the magic pool. She saw Cale and Sarah ruling their kingdom, saw the changes they'd made, saw the challenges they still faced, saw the love that bound them growing stronger instead of fading. "You were right," she said to the darkness, to the ancient magic of the forest. "Real love did exist. I just had to wait for someone brave enough to find it." The darkness pulsed with satisfaction. The curse served its purpose. The prince learned his lesson. The girl found her worth, and humanity proved it's still capable of choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. "So what now?" Morgana asked. "Are there other princes to curse? Other lessons to teach?" "Perhaps," the darkness mused. "But not yet. Let this story end happily. Let them have their joy. They earned it." Morgana smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Yes, they did." She waved her hand, and the pool's surface went still. The images faded. The trials were over. The curse was broken. The story was complete. And in a castle overlooking the Northern Territories, a prince and a peasant held hands and faced their future together. Dangerous, difficult, impossible, perfect. If Sarah and Cale's journey showed you that real love isn't about perfection, it's about choosing each other through every imperfect moment, then subscribe. Because every story we share is about finding light in darkness, worth in brokenness, and love in the most unexpected places. Join us for more tales where the impossible becomes possible, and where hope is always the most dangerous and beautiful choice you can make.